हेलो 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 चेक 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 हेलो 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 रिवर्ब बढ़ा दीजिए हेलो हेलो चेक चेक हेलो नहीं आ रहा रिपीट हेलो हेलो चेक चेक
कम करिए हेलो रिपीट बढ़ाइए हेलो चेक सभी अतिथि कुछ ही क्षणों में सभागार में प्रवेश करने वाले हैं। आप सभी से अनुरोध है कि कृपया करके शांतिपूर्वक बैठ जाएं। हेलो
होगी ना जो प्रेजेंटेशन दे रहा है उसको एक बार दिखा फिर उस पर एक बार उसको हाँ उस पर ले लेना और जैसे कभी बीच में इंट्रैक्शन कर रहा है यहाँ सामने आ रहा है तो ले सेकंड प्रेजेंटेशन उसको दे रहा है हेलो
मैं इस सभागार में सभी अतिथियों का स्वागत करता हूं और मैं इसलिए अनुरोध करता हूं कि मिस्टर के.एस. मुकुल साहब हमारे विश्वविद्यालय के कुलपति डॉक्टर आसिफ साहब के आए और मंच पर स्थान ग्रहण करें। साथ ही आ रहे हैं इसके ऑफिसर मिस्टर सैयद अली साहब, हमारे विश्वविद्यालय के वरिष्ठ प्रोफेसर भगवान जी और आगरा कॉलेज से बता रहे प्रोफेसर गौरव गुप्ता जी से अनुरोध है कि कृपया करके मंच पर अपना स्थान ग्रहण करें। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। इस सभागार में G20
पर आयोजित होने वाले
इस
कार्यक्रम में
मैं आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। मैं स्वागत करता हूं मंचासीन सभी हस्तियों का। मैं स्वागत करता हूं विश्वविद्यालय के सभी सम्मानित शिक्षकों का। मैं स्वागत करता हूं इस विश्वविद्यालय से संबंधित जितने भी छात्र और छात्राएं जो कि इस सभागार में उपस्थित हैं। मैं सबसे पहले मंचासीन सभी हस्तियों से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वह माँ सरस्वती की प्रतिमा पर माल्यार्पण करें और दीप प्रज्वलन करें। संस्थान की टीम से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वह कृपया करके कुल गीत सुनाएं।
ज्ञान ज्योति से सदा प्रकाश शिक्षा का स्थान अलौकिक, शिक्षा समाज में अति प्रतिष्ठित, जिसका ध्येय वाक्य जहु गुंजित, तम समाज उत्तीर्णमय। डॉक्टर भीमराव अम्बेडकर आगरा विश्वविद्यालय, डॉक्टर भीमराव अम्बेडकर आगरा विश्वविद्यालय। विश्व गुरु भारत देश की धरती पर उत्तर प्रदेश की, कृष्ण की ब्रज भूमि अति पावन, जमुना बहती जहाँ मन भावन। अग्रवन की प्राचीन संस्कृति, शिक्षा दीक्षा की अनुपम एकति, 1927 में स्थापित, 1 जुलाई से राज्य अधिशासित, मातृ संस्था बहु संस्थानों की, जननी अनेक विश्वविद्यालयों की, देश का प्राचीन ज्ञानालय। डॉक्टर भीमराव अम्बेडकर आगरा विश्वविद्यालय, डॉक्टर भीमराव अम्बेडकर आगरा विश्वविद्यालय। भाषा कला वाणिज्य विज्ञान विषयों के उत्तम संस्थान, देश को दी विभूतियां महान, जिसके इतिहास का यशगान। योग्य प्रशासन उत्तम शिक्षण, शिक्षार्थियों का हित संरक्षण, जन सेवा में नित्य समर्पित, उपलब्धियां होती रहती है। मातृभूमि की शान है जो, स्वदेश का स्वाभिमान है जो, नव अनुसंधान का शोधा है। डॉक्टर भीमराव अम्बेडकर आगरा विश्वविद्यालय, डॉक्टर भीमराव अम्बेडकर आगरा विश्वविद्यालय, डॉक्टर भीमराव अम्बेडकर आगरा विश्वविद्यालय।
एक वीडियो हम आपको दिखाने जा रहे हैं जो कि G20 से संबंधित है। मेरा आपसे अनुरोध है कि कृपया उस वीडियो को चलाएं।
India, home to 1.3 billion people, is a confluence of religions, traditions and customs. A thriving global center of technology and the world's largest democracy. As one of the oldest civilizations in the world with a rich cultural heritage and diversity, and as the 5th largest economy in the world, India is proud to assume the presidency of G20. As the country moves into a new era, we look to another poignant symbol for humanity to emerge victorious from challenges. The lotus, the national flower of India, represents our history and culture and symbolizes spirituality, fruitfulness, wealth and knowledge. And that's the inspiration for India's G20 logo design. The design, rendered in saffron, white, green and blue, is drawn from the national flag of India. The 7 petals in the logo signify the 7 seas and the coming together of 7 continents at G20 India 2023. Sitting above the lotus is a representation of the earth, reflecting India's pro-planet approach to life and seeing the world as one family. From this, we derive the theme for G20 India 2023, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, one earth, one family, one future. A theme that brings the G20's focus on sharing global growth, while being in harmony with nature. India 2023. One Earth, one family, one future.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। अतिथि देवो भव। हिंदुस्तान, भारत, इंडिया बहुत सारे नाम हैं, लेकिन सही नाम जिससे हम इसे संबोधित करते हैं वह भारत है। G20 देशों की जो एक समूह तैयार हुआ जिसे हमने ग्रुप 20 नाम दिया, जिसमें कि 19 देश और यूरोपियन यूनियन भी शामिल है। जब इसकी स्थापना हुई तब उसके पीछे जो उद्देश्य था वो सिर्फ ये था कि जो 97-98 में जो एक इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस क्रिएट हुई थी उसको लेकर के कैसे चीजों को मैनेज किया जाए, इसके लिए एशियन कंट्रीज ने मिलकर के एक ग्रुप फ्रेम किया। मैं
यहाँ पर
इस G20 कनेक्ट कार्यक्रम में
उपस्थित
हुए
हमारे
महानुभावों के स्वागत के लिए मैं सर्वप्रथम आमंत्रित कर रहा हूँ
गणित
विभाग के प्रोफेसर संजय चौधरी जी से कि वे आए और मिस्टर G.S. मुकुल साहब का स्वागत करें। प्रोफेसर संजय चौधरी साहब। इसी श्रृंखला में मैं प्रोफेसर सरदचंद उपाध्याय जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वह आए और RIS के कंसल्टेंट मिस्टर सैयद अली साहब को स्वागत करें।
मैं
विश्वविद्यालय के वरिष्ठ प्रोफेसर अनिल वर्मा जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वे आए और विश्वविद्यालय की माननीय कुलपति जी का स्वागत करें। मैं विश्वविद्यालय के भौतिक विभाग के प्रोफेसर B.S. शर्मा जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वे आए और सभी कुलपति जी का स्वागत करें। विश्वविद्यालय के कंप्यूटर साइंस विभाग के प्रोफेसर मनोज उपाध्याय जी से अनुरोध है कि वे आए और हमारे प्रोफेसर सुभमान जी का स्वागत करें। गृह विज्ञान संस्थान की निदेशिका प्रोफेसर अचला कक्कड़ जी से अनुरोध है कि आगरा कॉलेज से पधारे प्रोफेसर गौरव मिश्रा जी का स्वागत करें। प्रोफेसर अनिल गुप्ता जी से अनुरोध है कि वह G20 के विश्वविद्यालय के कोऑर्डिनेटर लवकुश मिश्रा जी का स्वागत करें। प्रोफेसर अनिल गुप्ता जी। इस सभागार में उपस्थित मैं सभी वरिष्ठ प्रोफेसर, सभी मेरे वरिष्ठ शिक्षक और छात्र छात्राओं का स्वागत करता हूं और मैं खास स्वागत करता हूं इसी विश्वविद्यालय से सेवानिवृत्त हुए जौनपुर विश्वविद्यालय के पूर्व कुलपति प्रोफेसर सुंदरलाल सर का। मैं अनुरोध करूंगा प्रोफेसर संतोष बिहारी जी से कि प्रोफेसर सुंदरलाल सर का स्वागत करें। प्रोफेसर संतोष बिहारी जी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। इस सभागार में उपस्थित छात्र छात्राओं की संख्याओं को देखते हुए अभी जो स्वागत में तालियां बजाई गई थी उनका गूंज इतनी अच्छी नहीं थी कि किसी का स्वागत हो सके। एक बार करतल कीजिए, छोटा तालियों से स्वागत कीजिए। लगे कि G20 देश की वाकई हम एक कनेक्ट करने जा रहे हैं। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आप सभी का। पीछे जितने भी छात्र छात्राएं खड़े हुए वो सीढ़ी पर बैठ जाएं और उधर कई सारी सीट खाली है, सीढ़ी पर बैठिए आराम से। मैं आप सभी सभी का स्वागत करता हूं। जो छात्र खड़े हुए हैं कि उन्होंने खड़े होकर के सुनना पसंद किया, लेकिन आप सीढ़ियों पर बैठ सकते हैं। G20 कार्यक्रम में जिसमें कि हमने एक नारा लिया हुआ है वसुधैव कुटुंबकम, वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली एंड वन फ्यूचर। हम लोग जब तक इस दिशा में कार्य नहीं करेंगे तब तक हम G20 को लेकर के जो विचारधारा हमारे देश ने, हमारे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने अपनाई हुई है, उन्हें हम पूरा नहीं कर पाएंगे। मैं इस विषय पर विचार रखने के लिए सर्वप्रथम आमंत्रित कर रहा हूं अपने विश्वविद्यालय की माननीय कुलपति प्रोफेसर आशु रानी जी से कि वे आए और एक स्वागत भाषण करें।
Thank you very much, Professor Sanjeev. That's fine. A very good morning to one and all who are present in this JP Sabanar of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University today. I welcome this august audience who is going to witness an important program of G20 University Connect, that is Ignite the Young Mind. This program is especially for the universities. This program is especially for our young minds, our future, our students. I welcome all of you, all the persons sitting on the dais, all the senior professors of this university, teachers of different departments, and my dear students. Do you know that while expressing his mission and vision on G20 presidency in Bali, our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji remembered the culture and principles of Indian civilization. And he has taken Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is basically our principles, which is our motto, which is in our blood, which is in our genes. One India, one earth, one family and one future. We are not only thinking about ourselves, but we are thinking about the rest of the world too. You all know, I think many programs of G20 has been organized in this seminar hall, and you know about what G20 is. And when we got the presidency of this prestigious G20 community, which is working on many factors all over the country, all over the world. We believe in shared and common solutions for the global issues. Some issues I think I have already narrated in some other lecture. There were economic crisis, there was something related with the trade, they were related with the climate change issues, they were related with the hunger, they were related with the mutual and multilateral cooperation between different sectors. In renewable energy sector, that may be in education sectors. So many issues they will be discussed during our presidency, and many people, I think more than 1,000 or meetings will be held of different countries. In these programs and in this one very important concept and one of the important sector which has been taken up is the G20 University Connect. I think our speakers, they will be telling a lot of things about what this program is and how we can be benefited and what is the aim of this particular program. Basically, this G20 presidency of India is an opportunity for Indian universities to connect to the universities and the students of many countries for learning and exchange of ideas, for technology exchange, for getting and accepting what is better with them, and showcasing our potential too. We have lot of potential. We have lot of, knowledge. Our cultural knowledge is very important. Our traits are very important. They can be benefited to rest of the world. So we have this opportunity to showcase our knowledge and to accept what they have better than us. It will provide economic growth to our local knowledge. We can multiply, and we can, of course, the industrial sector will be benefited. We will be having our local products. They can be marketed at the global level. We will be inviting investors from different countries. So this is a great opportunity, and we should understand and we should start doing things what is most needed. Today, I feel honored to welcome Ambassador G.S. Mukulsa to our campus for sharing his thoughts on the role of India as a G20 leader after assuming presidency of G20. I am informed that Mr. G.S. Mukul is a 1981 batch IFS with his vast international experience as an ambassador and presently holding a position of Professor Emeritus and Director of International Relations at one university in Gurgaon. His experience as administrator and in foreign services as an academic leader, it will be definitely highlighting the correct path for the university to step forward for the G20 University Connect aim of the country and working in line without wasting our energy with our central government, with our state government, and just reaching to the mandate of this program. I welcome all the faculty members and the faculty member from RIS, Dr. Ali, which is a Delhi-based autonomous policy research institute, specialized in international issues and working for effective policy dialogues and capacity building. I hope that your talk in this event will guide our students for better understanding the G20 University Connect program in true sense. I very proudly tell to the audience that our university is making all efforts, and I am proud of my students that whatever assignment has been given to them during G20 delegations when they came to Agra, they have done it perfectly, and they have been appreciated by local administrators, and even the reports has gone to the Lucknow departments also. And I am very happy that our students are taking up all the challenges and all the targets given to them. A brief presentation of which will be given to all the students by our G20 Nodal Officer, Professor Lavkush Mishra, today also. My dear students, try to take up this opportunity, understand, because in 2-hour deliberation, we can't learn everything. But pick up the words, pick up what is important for you, and go for searching. In-depth knowledge is required that you can take up and try to make change and try to accept the changes, whatever we are suggesting or the government is suggesting. And I hope after 1 year, when this presidency will be over and we will be handing over this presidency to some other country, we will be finding, yes, we could have a change in ourselves in our country, and we are really benefiting. I wish all the best to all of you, and I am thankful to the organizers of this event that definitely, as I have been told, that this is the 44th lecture in the country on this event, and total 75 lectures will be organized under this program. So I think we are lucky that we have been chosen and this university is part of this Connect program. All the best and thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor, ma'am.
Now, the continuation of the program. I'm just going to invite one personality who is sitting over here. He is Mr. Sayyad Ali. He is the consultant of RIS. RIS means the Research and Information System for Developing Countries. He is the Foreign Affairs consultant over there of the Indian government. RIS is basically an organization which is designed for the development of some developing countries, especially in the field of technology, trade, economic development, and the investment. RIS is basically a forum fostering the effective policy dialogue, a capacity building among the developing countries. So I am just going to call Mr. Sayyad Ali, the faculty from the IRS, to give his views. Mr. Sayyad Ali, sir.
गुड आफ्टरनून एवरीवन। सो मेरा रोल यहाँ पे बहुत सिंपल रहेगा। आप लोगों को ये बताना है कि G20 यूनिवर्सिटी कनेक्ट क्या है, क्यों है। सो RIS एक थिंक टैंक है। थिंक टैंक का रोल ये होता है कि जो आपकी जो पॉलिसी होती है उससे पहले जो भी काम लगता है, जो भी रिसर्च इन्वॉल्व होती है, तो RIS की स्पेशलाइजेशन इंटरनेशनल ट्रेड पॉलिसी में। तो यानी कि मानिए इंडिया और बांग्लादेश के बीच में कोई पैक्ट होना है, तो वो हमारे लिए कितना फायदेमंद होगा उसका एनालिसिस एक थिंक टैंक करता है। बहुत इंडिया में काफ़ी सारे थिंक टैंक्स हैं, आपके यूपी में भी हैं, दिल्ली में भी हैं। RIS इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट नोन वंस आउट ऑफ इट। सो RIS हैज बीन गिवन दिस जॉब कि 75 यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में, जो कि अब शायद 100 भी हो सकती हैं, 53 लोकेशंस में जहाँ जहाँ G20 की मीटिंग हो रही है, वहाँ की यूनिवर्सिटी में हमें जाके आप लोगों को इन्फॉर्म करना है कि क्या G20 प्रोसीडिंग्स हैं। अभी एम्बेसडर अपने एक्सपीरियंस से आप लोगों को इनलाइटन करेंगे। ही हिमसेल्फ हैज बीन अ सू शेरपा। आइडिया ये रहेगा कि आप लोगों को पता चले कि इंडिया की जो प्रेसिडेंसी है, यानी कि जैसे इंडोनेशिया से आई है, ब्राजील में जाएगी, सो उसका क्या रोल रहेगा इन एन इंक्लूसिव मैनर, कि हम सब कैसे इंगेज हो पाए। सो G20 के काफ़ी अलग अलग भाग हैं। एग्रीकल्चर के ऊपर डिस्कशन हो रहे हैं इस टाइम, साइंस के ऊपर डिस्कशन हो रहे हैं। एक थिंक टैंक्स का भी एक अलग T20 भी है। स्टार्टअप 20 है, जैसे स्टार्टअप कल्चर आ गया है आपके इंडिया इज वन ऑफ द लीडर्स इन स्टार्टअप्स राइट नाउ। सो वैसे ये जितनी भी है 19 कंट्रीज इंक्लूडिंग यूरोपियन यूनियन, अफ्रीकन यूनियन ऑल्सो बीइंग एज अ गेस्ट कंट्री, इंक्लूडिंग स्पेन, इंडिया ने अपने भी कुछ और फ्रेंडली कंट्रीज को बुलाया है। तो इन सबके बीच में एक लार्ज डिस्कशन होगा। उसके बाद सितंबर में जो आपकी समिट लेवल मीटिंग है, जिसमें हेड ऑफ स्टेट्स आएंगे, यानी कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी होंगे, प्रॉब्ली हेड ऑफ स्टेट्स फ्रॉम डिफरेंट कंट्रीज। सो वो सब फाइनल समिट लेवल मीटिंग्स जिसको बोलते हैं वो होंगे कि एग्रीकल्चर के ऊपर ये आउटकम आया है, आपके स्टार्टअप के ऊपर ये आउटकम आया है, बिजनेस कैसे बेहतर हो सकता है ग्रुप ऑफ 20 कंट्रीज में। सो दिस इज गोइंग टू बी डिस्कस्ड इन दी समिट लेवल मीटिंग इन सितंबर। विद यूनिवर्सिटी कनेक्ट व्हाट वी आर डूइंग इज कि हम आपको जाके इन्हीं सारी चीजों के बारे में इन्फॉर्म कर रहे हैं कि आप भी अपना एक रोल प्ले करें। एट द वेरी मिनिमम एटलीस्ट बी एक्टिव सिटीजन्स ऑफ व्हाट द इंटायर, आपने हर जगह G20 की ब्रांडिंग देखी होगी। सो इस क्यूरियोसिटी बीइंग द की, we are trying to fill that with information to keep you informed के कैसे आप सबका रोल है, and how is it going to affect all of us। उम्मीद करता हूँ कि आप लोगों को with the distinguished lecture being addressed by ambassador, उससे आपकी जो उत्तेजना है उसको हम लोग एक तरीके से भर पाएं, बता पाएं कि क्या G20 हम सबके लिए लेके आया है for the period of 1 year। थैंक यू।
बहुत सैयद जी साहब, चाहे आपका वक्तव्य की बात करें, चाहे माननीय कुलपति जी के वक्तव्य की बात करें, सब में जो चीज छिपी हुई है और जिसको हमें सबको सोच करके चलना है, वह लौट करके वही स्टेटमेंट है, वसुधैव कुटुंबकम। जब तक हम लोग इस पूरे संसार को एक परिवार मान करके नहीं चलेंगे, तब तक हम आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते। G20 के जो मेंबर देश हैं, उनके बारे में एक लाइन में मैं कुछ आंकड़ा आपको बताना चाहता हूं कि G20 कितना बड़ा और कितना मजबूत एक ग्रुप है। इसका छोटा सा एक लाइन में मैं आपको दे रहा हूं कि पूरे विश्व की जो GDP है उसका 85% हिस्सा G20 कंट्रीज के पास है। पूरे विश्व में जितना भी ट्रेड होता है उसका 75% ट्रेड G20 के पास है और 2/3 of the population of the entire world belongs to G20 countries. Now I'm just going to call one of the eminent personality. We are eagerly waiting him to have some words, some enlightenment on the concept of G20 and other aspects of G20. I'm just going to call a personality, Mr. G.S. Mukul, Ambassador G.S. Mukul Sahab. Ambassador G.S. Mukul is an Indian Foreign Service officer of 1981 batch. He is a postgraduate in political science with a specialization in international relations. He is presently the Professor Emeritus and Director of International Relations at the Susant University, Gurgaon, which was formerly known as the Ansals University. During his 40 years diplomatic career, Ambassador Mukul was the Dean of Sushma Swaraj Institute of Foreign Services, the premier institution in India for the training of Indian and foreign diplomats. Earlier, he was the Ambassador of India to the Netherlands. He also served as Ambassador of India to Oman and the Consul General of India in Munich. He has held diplomatic positions in Indian missions posts abroad in Abu Dhabi, Kennedy, Colombo, Geneva, Riyadh, etc. As Joint Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, he was also the ministry's source officer for the G20 process and was involved with 6 G20 summits. I'm just going to call Mr. J.S. Mukul over here to have his views. Please welcome Mr. J.S. Mukul Sahab.
Professor Ashwadani, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Agra, Professor Ajay Taneja, Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Sugam Anand and Professor Gaurang Mishra, my co-panelists today, Mr. Sayyid Ali, representative from RIS, faculty representatives, senior faculty members and academics from this university and other universities here, and dear students, namaskar and a very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much also for that kind welcome and very detailed introduction. I'm personally delighted to be at Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Agra today for this G20 University Connect Engaging Young Minds program. I don't have to say much on this program as Mr. Sayyid Ali from RIS has already beautifully explained this program to you. I would like to thank the Research and Information System for Developing Countries RIS and the Ministry of External Affairs MEA for inviting me to this gathering. Many thanks also to the university and its leadership for their welcome, for the very warm welcome, warm words of welcome, for the arrangements and your hospitality. Thank you very much, Madam, and to all your team. Now turning to the subject of today, G20. My presentation, and I've been given about half an hour, will be divided in 2 parts. In the first part, I will delineate for you the salient features of the G20 and touch upon India's G20 presidency. In the second part of my presentation, I will try to outline the priorities of the G20 presidency, which is actually the meat of India's presidency and the work that we are proposing, or we are doing rather, in our presidency. So let me start by way of introduction. Much has already been said. What is G20? And in order to understand this clearly, we have to take a step back and understand the G7 first, which was an informal body or grouping of 7 developed or industrialized countries, G7 countries, which came into being in the 1970s. The idea was that they will tackle the then existing problems and emergent global crisis. So this was the beginning of the G7, Canada, USA, UK, Germany, France, Italy, Japan. This went on till 1997 when they got in Russia also in order to, and that is why when we often speak of the G7, we often speak of the G7 or the G8. But soon they realized that this is not enough to tackle the global problems, particularly the global economic problems. And therefore, as was mentioned, during the crises, many crises of the 1990s following that, the G20 was set up involving the most developed, or as we call them, the emerging economies. But at that time, it was only at the level of finance ministers and central bank governors. Then, in 2008, when the Great Recession or the global financial and economic crisis hit us, they elevated or upgraded the G20 to the summit level. For the first time in Washington in 2008, it became a forum at the heads of state and government level. And in 2009, at the third summit in Pittsburgh, the G20 decided and said that it is going to be the premier forum for international economic cooperation. So that is the basic evolution on the from the G7 side. But we also have to look at the evolution from the developing country or from the Indian perspective. Now, traditionally, and I'm sure many of you, even if you may not be all students of international relations, will understand that the bread and butter of foreign policy and diplomacy are bilateral relations between countries. These are supplemented or complemented by regional and multilateral fora. In our region we have SAARC, BIMSTEC and others. We have multilateral fora, and today we are looking at the G20. Now, as developing countries, I'm talking pre-G20 now, India was also part of a number of developing country fora, the G77, the G15 and so on. And typically these organizations address two types of issues. First was the South-South cooperation. As the name suggests, that is straightforward, cooperating, the developing countries cooperating among themselves. The second was the more complicated part, what was called then the North-South dialogue. The effort of the developing world to engage the developed countries. So sometimes the communique would barely get acknowledged when we send it from the G15 or the G77. Sometimes a few members of the developing countries would get invited to a side event, for example, a breakfast meeting by the developed countries. Then there was a stage when they selected 5 of the largest developing countries or emerging economies, China, India, Brazil, South Africa and Mexico, and we got what is called the Halligan-Dam-Lakila process or the G8+5 process. But very frankly, all these had very limited success. They had mixed results, and from our perspective, it was an unsatisfactory situation. So therefore, when the crisis of 2008, the Great Recession came, and the North countries or the G7, G8 countries realized the necessity of engaging the developing world in a meaningful manner, it was for the first time that developing countries got a place, a much deserved place at the high table. And as they say, rest is history. So this is the important, seminal event, and I'm very fond of a saying, never allow a crisis to go waste. The Great Recession in that sense convince the developed world that they have to engage with us as equal partners. But the word of caution here. Countries like India and other members, other developing and emerging country members of the G20 should remember that we should never forget the other developing countries who are not today part of the G20 but were always one of us throughout. So please hold this thought here. We will revert to this global south as we proceed to India's presidency. The next question is, who comprises the G20? You have already heard, I've outlined for you the G7, G8, plus then came the G5, which were included China, India, South Africa, Brazil and Mexico. Then in the G20 they took in 6 more countries which were the largest economies: Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Australia, Indonesia and the Republic of Korea. So that makes it 19 and the European Union is the 20th member. But G20 does not mean that there are only 20 around the table, because Spain has been from the very beginning a permanent invitee. And then there are 11 international organizations which are always present, starting with the United Nations, the IMF, World Bank, WTO, ILO, WHO, Financial Stability Board, OECD, ASEAN, African Union, Nepal, etc. So that makes it 20 plus Spain 21 plus 11, 32. Now, each presidency or the host has also a prerogative to invite some guests. And India, as its presidency, has invited the largest number of guests. We are having 8 countries which will be our guests at the summit. And these are Bangladesh, Egypt, Mauritius, Netherlands, Nigeria, Oman, Singapore and UAE. So that makes it 40, plus we have invited 3 international organizations, the ISA, International Solar Alliance, and the CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, both organizations in which India has been very closely involved, and the Asian Development Bank, ADB. So at the Delhi summit, there will be at least 43 people around the table. That is the kind of depth or the width that this is going to have. Also here to understand that while the G20 is broadly balanced between developed countries and emerging or developing countries, there is one major imbalance, and that is the representation of Africa. The G20 has only South Africa. With the organizations, we will have African Union and Nepal represented by Comoros and Rwanda. But I think we have done very well that as part of our guest aid, we have 3 African countries, Mauritius, Nigeria, and Egypt. So at the Delhi summit, Africa will be well represented by 6 leaders at the summit. Moving on. Why is the G20 so important? And that was already mentioned in the introduction, but I'll just very briefly recap for you. What is the heft or weight of G20? ये लैंड मास देखें तो 50% और आधी दुनिया की कंट्रीज G20 में रिप्रेजेंटेड हैं. 50% of the land mass, 2/3 or 67% of the global population, 3/4 or 75% of the international trade, and of course, as was mentioned, 85% of the global GDP. In that sense, it is the natural, in a way, in a manner of speaking, a natural forum to be the premier forum for international economic cooperation. But since this has already been touched, let me move on. Now, what are the G20's working methods or methodology? very briefly, let me touch on this. Initially, when it was elevated, as I said, in the Great Depression to the summit level, 2008, towards the end, we had the first summit. In 2009 and 2010, we had two summits each because of the crisis was at its peak and we needed to address. But since 2011, there have been a practice of annual summits. And to date, we have had 17 summits, and therefore the summit in Delhi will be the 18th summit. The G20 presidency now rotates on an annual basis in sort of coordination with the summit presidency. India has the presidency from the 1st of December 2022 to 30th November 2023. The G20 has no permanent secretariat, which is at a slight difference from a typical multilateral organization. In fact, the presidency provides the G20 secretariat and manages things with the help of a troika. 3 countries, the past, the present, and the future presidencies. Indonesia, India, and Brazil. So this is the present troika during our presidency. The G20 works on 3 tracks. As you recall, I mentioned you started as a finance minister, central bank governor, so the original track is the finance track. Today it has 8 working groups or sub-tracks which feed into the finance track. Then there is the Sherpas track which came into being after 2008 when it was elevated to the summit level, and that has 13 working groups feeding into the Sherpas track. And in addition, 11 engagement groups have come in, including Y20, which is the Youth 20, a connect with the students, youth, etc. All these will feed in, they are all work in progress, will feed in to the summit which happens in Delhi in September 2023. The G20 decision making is by consensus. Now this is important, not only because each member country in a manner of speaking has a veto, but also the G20 is an informal grouping. Though so important, though such a perennial forum, it is an informal grouping, which basically means the decisions of the summit act as a political impetus on economic financial issues. The actual decisions are still to be taken in the respective fora. For example, if it pronounces on trade, the actual decision will have to be taken in the formal trade body, which is the WTO. If it pronounces on finance issues, the IMF or World Bank will take. So that is the decision-making process of the G20. Now the last point of the first part of my presentation, and I turn to India's G20 presidency. This is a presidency coming as it does after the pandemic, a presidency of healing, of harmony, of hope, and I may say peace. So the G20, this is actually well captured in the logo and the theme of the G20. I'll be brief here because you have already heard or rather seen the 2 lovely brief films explaining this, and also the Honorable Vice Chancellor referred to the theme, etc. So, but very briefly, just to recap, the lotus, of course, symbolizes many things, which is the logo. At one level, it has the 7 petals, which is the 7 continents. It has the national flag colors. And at another level, it is also symbolizes India's ancient heritage, faith, thought, and a symbol of hope. The India's G20 presidency, the timing is also very opportune. Why do I say this? The timing is opportune because it comes after 75 years of our independence and at the beginning of the Amrit Kaal. Also, India's presidency's theme, the Vasudeva Kutumbakam, you have already heard this, so let me be very brief and say it reflects the thought of universal brotherhood, the feeling of oneness, symbolized by our traditional ethos of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, or one earth, one family, one future. In fact, I must say that I was absolutely delighted traveling to the city of Agra, that the city is so well postered and covered by the G20 slogans and G20 boards. Another unique feature of India's G20 presidency is that it is an opportunity for us to showcase incredible India, the mother of democracy in all its glory, in all its variety, in all its diversity. And India is hosting this summit, and of course summit is in Delhi, but the run-up to the summit, all these meetings of the finance, Sherpa engagement tracks that I mentioned, in more than 200 meetings in over 50 cities or destinations across all 28 states and 8 union territories. In that sense, it's a whole of country effort. Everybody is involved in terms of putting our best foot forward for India's G20 presidency. And also a collateral advantage, it gives us the opportunity to showcase a very rich and diverse culture, our couture, our cuisine, etc., which has, as I said, the added collateral bonus of encouraging foreign tourists when so many will come. And of course, Agra as a prime center of tourism, I'm sure will benefit with the G20 being held here. So that was the first part, all the aspects of the G20, including India's presidency. I move to the second part of my presentation, which is India's priorities for G20. Now let me here start with a caveat. The G20 over the years has come to acquire a Christmas tree approach. What do I mean by that? It means that almost anything and everything is part of the G20 agenda, and each of these items have developed or acquired a life and momentum of their own. So they will all go forward, but of course there are, in addition to that, or to added to that, is the priorities of the host country. With regard to India, the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has already explained India's priorities, and I quote, that these will be, I quote, inclusive, ambitious, decisive, and action-oriented, unquote. Further, India's broad theme of priority, which is actually a cross-cutting priority across everything, is development of the global south. You remember I asked you to hold the thought that though we have become part of the G20, we should not forget the other 120 or whatever developing countries. We did well as preparatory to our presidency. The Prime Minister hosted the Voice of the Global Summit with virtual meeting with 120 countries in order to get their views while formulating our priorities. So this Voice of the Global South permeates the specific priorities that I'll be talking about, and it is therefore a cross-cutting priority across all priorities. Now coming to specific Indian priorities, I have selected 6. There could of course be more, but 6 priorities. The first one is green development, climate finance, lifestyle for environment. Today we are all aware the foremost challenge is the challenge of climate change, and developing countries or the global south requires both adaptation and mitigation support from technology side and from the finance side. So climate change will focus at this summit on climate financing. One example of that being that developed countries have to deliver on their promise of providing $100 billion per year to the developing world for their energy transitions, to ensure just energy transitions, or what we call energy justice. So this is the first priority. Linked to that, we also talk of the lifestyle for environment or life, which focuses on environmentally sustainable and responsible choices at the personal, of course, but national, global levels. So it is at individual, national, global level, so that we can have a cleaner, greener, bluer future for all of us. And then related to that is also the creation and the nurturing of a global network of individuals, or what is called the pro-planet people, or the P3. So this is all subsumed under the first specific priority of climate and green development and climate financing. The second priority is technological transformation and digital public infrastructure. Now we are all familiar with India's IT prowess. I don't need to tell this gathering, but just to say that India's achievements in the digital side have been phenomenal. We talk of the Jam Trinity, the Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, Mobile, the India Stack, and the direct benefit transfer this has resulted for our common man. The pandemic, again to use the same phrase, the pandemic in a way, the COVID app is enabled us during the pandemic to administer 2 billion shots of vaccines, and the work from home provided an added momentum to the digital transformation. Then of course there are the UPI platforms for financial and other purposes. And just last week, I think I heard a CNN report which says that India's consumption of data today is more than the USA and China combined. So that is the kind of digital progress that we have made, and that is something that is our priority for the G20, particularly with regard to the Global South, where we are offering to share it with them so that they can also benefit from this. The third Indian priority of our G20 presidency is accelerated, inclusive and resilient growth. Now this is obviously a cornerstone for sustainable development. Prime Minister's Gati Shakti plan for infrastructure development, or accelerating the growth of SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Now here, developed countries again need to fulfill their commitments. It is a sad commentary that hardly any developed country is contributing the 0.7% GDP that it is mandated to provide the developed countries and which is required by the developed countries, crucial for the Global South for their development as also for meeting their SDG goals. So this is the third Indian priority. I turn to the fourth, food security and energy security. Now for the Global South or developing countries as a whole, today there are many concerns and many crises affecting them. Energy and fuel crisis, food crisis, fertilizer crisis, I refer to the climate of course, the debt crisis, and very sadly there's nobody listening. There's nobody listening to the problems of the developing countries. So G20 in that sense provides the ideal forum for the globe or the world to listen to this as because these crises impact the developing world directly, and therein address also the related issue of unilateral sanctions which has been impacting the food and energy security of countries, especially of the Global South. The fifth priority of India, women and gender equality. And I'm very happy to learn today that Honorable Vice Chancellor here is the First Lady Vice Chancellor. My compliments, ma'am, to you. But as the Honorable Prime Minister said, and I quote, from financial inclusion to social security, quality healthcare to housing, education to entrepreneurship. Many efforts have been made to put our Nari Shakti at the forefront of India's development journey. We also know that SDG 5 speaks of gender equality and women empowerment. Of course, in India, we have done a lot for women empowerment, and I don't need to talk about the Ujjwala scheme, the Nirbhaya scheme, the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, the Sukanya Samriddhi, the disbursements under Mudra, etc. But I think suffice it to say that G20 needs to mainstream gender equality and women empowerment, which is actually a cross-cutting priority for everything. Sixth, last but certainly not the least, India's priority for our presidency and the summit is multilateralism. Now, multilateral institutions in the 21st century have unfortunately not kept pace with the changing times or current needs of the times, as they say. Many of these were crafted in the 1940s and 50s in the post-World War II scenario, and they do not today reflect ground realities. They are crying out for reforms in order to remain relevant. Just to give you some examples, the United Nations needs reform all across, but starting with the expansion of the UN Security Council, where countries like India need to be represented on any criteria you take. The Bretton Woods institutions, IMF and World Bank need quota or voting reforms. The WTO needs reforms on the trade side. It was almost dysfunctional or paralyzed for some years. The pandemic showed us that the WHO came up short during the pandemic and needs reforms. So therefore today, India stands for reformed multilateralism, which is the need of the hour, which is a demand of the global south, and which is therefore priority for India's G20 presidency. So these are the 6 specific priorities, but as we say, the global situation is not static, it is dynamic. While we may have outlined our priorities, we need to keep these priorities should keep evolving in order to address the changes or the dynamics of the global situation. Now, please recall that the G20 came into being and was successful in handling the financial crisis and the economic crisis in 2008 or the Great Recession. And today, since March, we are again hearing financial rumblings or banking turbulence on both sides of the Atlantic. Just last week, another mid-sized bank has collapsed or has been taken over, etc. in the United States. I'm not an expert on that, but what I'm trying to say is G20 under India's presidency is well positioned to address this through measures in order to nip this crisis in the bud before it again becomes a full-blown economic or banking or financial crisis. So therefore, having outlined the priorities, the G20 in the first part and priorities in the second part, by way of conclusion, let me say that so far, for India's G20 presidency, our leadership has done extremely well in articulating, one, the inclusive G20 agenda, and two, the priorities, India's priorities, which are priorities of the global south. But the challenge does not stop here, end here. In fact, in a way, the challenge is now to translate these priorities into consensus decisions at the summit. And that is easier, having been involved with 6 G20 summits as a Shu Sherpa. I can tell you that it is easier said than done. This remains today work in progress. It will remain work in progress to the lead up to the summit in September 23. Of course, we understand that some priorities may get a little diluted because because by its very nature, multilateral organizations and G20 is no exception, work on the basis of consensus and to some extent the minimum common or the lowest common denominator will operate. But nevertheless, these priorities remain important for the global south. Another challenge is the challenge of geopolitics. Now, one clear example today is Ukraine, the issues of Ukraine, which may distract, which may divert, or which may even derail the G20 process, so we need to remain aware of that. And here the G20 should remain focused on being what it has been anointed to do, the premier forum of international economic cooperation. And as our Honorable External Affairs Minister very aptly put it, let G20 be G20. It should stay there, it should refocus there. Should not try to do everything under the sun. That is the message that is coming across. So therefore, while these are the challenges, India, of course, has some advantages. We believe we bring value to the table. This goes back to our policies of strategic autonomy, our non-alignment, which has then become multi-alignment, and some people today talk of all alignment, etc. So India today is in the fortunate position that we can talk to everybody, we can work with almost everybody. Due to our standing, our stature, our capabilities, our credibility, India can play an important bridging role. We can play an important catalytic role in building the required consensus, in trying to bring everyone together, in taking everybody on board. But let me be clear. The G20 works by consensus, as I pointed out. Ultimately, consensus requires that all 20 members of the G20 come together as stakeholders. G20 does not belong only to India, it belongs to all the 20 of them as stakeholders. So they all need to collectively own the process and work for the success of the summit. So therefore, to say G20 earned its reputation of tackling the Great Recession successfully. Today, numerous economic crises are there. Priorities have been well spelled out, which need to be addressed. Therefore, G20 remains relevant and needs, in that sense, to rise to the occasion. I conclude by saying a lot of hope of the G20 itself, of the global south, of the whole world at large, rides on India's G20 presidency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. K. Mukul, for providing such a nice information which starts from G7 and goes up to G20. And also, I am really thankful to you for providing the working methodology of G20 and also providing some information
regarding the priorities, position and the progress of India. I am really thankful to you. As far as this country is concerned, the presidency of this country about G20 is concerned, I am just having one line for that. मैं अकेला चला था जाने में मंजिल मगर लोग मिलते गए और कारवां बनता गया. Thank you very much, Professor Mukul Sahab, for providing such a nice information. Now I am just going to call a senior professor of this university, Professor Somaman sir, for providing a special remark on it. Professor Somaman sir.
Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Ashwani ji, Ambassador G.S. Mukul, Shri Sayyid Ali ji, Pro Vice Chancellor of the University Professor Taneja, Professor Gaurang.
हालांकि रोटेशन से हर कंट्री का नंबर आता है आज भागों में विभाजित है वो देश, लेकिन एक तो ये हमारे काल है 75 वर्ष हमारी स्वाधीनता को हो गए और अगले 25 वर्ष का रोड मैप तैयार किया जा रहा है कि हम महाशक्ति बने. महाशक्ति सामान्य दृष्टि से नहीं, महाशक्ति आर्थिक दृष्टि से। और उस महाशक्ति को बनने में हर नागरिक की भागीदारी है। इस कार्यक्रम के आयोजन का उद्देश्य यह है कि जो गर्व का क्षण G20 की अध्यक्षता मिलने पर देश को मिला है, हर व्यक्ति हर नागरिक उसका भागीदार बने और उसमें अपना योगदान दे। मैं धन्यवाद दूंगा RIS को, जिसने ये कार्यक्रम देश के 75 विश्वविद्यालयों में आयोजित किया है और करना इनको हमारे लिए हुआ है। हम सभी जानते हैं कि हमारा देश लोकतंत्र और मल्टीलैटरलिज्म को समर्पित है। वसुधैव कुटुंबकम का ये फ्रेज जो है, ये महाउपनिषद के स्रोत से लिया गया है, जहां कहा गया है उदात चित्तानंद वसुधैव कुटुंबकम, और ये हमारी पार्लियामेंट में लिखा हुआ है वसुधैव कुटुंबकम। तो आप सोचिए, इस संस्कृति में ये भावना अनुभूति वसुधारी हमारा कुटुंब है, और उसको अगर कोई नेतृत्व करने के लिए गुरु मिल जाए तो वो अवधारणा पूरे विश्व में लागू करने का प्रयास करेगा। यही प्रयास G20 की अध्यक्षता मिलने के बाद यहाँ किया जा रहा है। वर्ल्ड इज बट वन टारगेट। हम 30 नवंबर 2023 तक की अध्यक्षता भारत के पास रहेगी और सितंबर में इसका महाधिवेशन दिल्ली में होगा। जो थीम है वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली, वन फ्यूचर, it affirms the value of all life, human, animal, plant and microorganisms, and their interconnectedness on the planet Earth and in the wider universe. The theme also spotlights life, जैसा मैंने बताया, lifestyle for environment, with its associated environmentally sustainable and responsible choices, both at the level of individual lifestyle as well as national development, leading to globally transformative actions resulting in a cleaner and better future. With all the working groups, a new working group on disaster risk reduction will be established under India's presidency to encourage collective work by the G20, undertake multidisciplinary research and exchange best practices on disaster risk reduction. जैसा मैंने बताया कि जो 20 मेंबर स्टेट्स हैं, उनके अलावा बांग्लादेश, इजिप्ट, मॉरिशस, नीदरलैंड्स, नाइजीरिया, ओमान, सिंगापुर, स्पेन, UAE और बहुत सारी आर्थिक संस्थाएं, IMF, वर्ल्ड बैंक, WHO, ADB, CCR आदि इसमें निमंत्रित होंगी। G20 meetings will not only be limited to New Delhi or other member policies, drawing inspiration from the Prime Minister's vision of an all-government approach, India will host 200 meetings in over 50 cities across 32 work streams and will have the opportunity to offer G20 delegates and guests a glimpse of India's rich cultural heritage and provide them with a unique Indian experience. The presidency is also a chance for the country's citizens with a unique opportunity to be a part of India's G20 story. The Indian G20 presidency has also planned a year-long Young India experience for G20 member countries, especially minority ones. The G20 was formally established at the G7 Finance Ministers meeting on 26 December 1999 with an inaugural meeting on 15 December 1999 in Berlin. In its 2009 summit, the G20 declared itself primary venue for international economic and financial cooperation. A broader permanent group of major world economies that would give a voice and new responsibilities in providing it was established. World economies that would give a voice and new responsibility in providing the primary focus of governance of global economy. Summit themes are varied from year to year. The theme of 2006 G20 meeting was building a In 2008, Brazil proposed dialogue on competition in financial markets, clean energy, economic development, and physical elements of growth and development. A number of other ministerial level G20 meetings have been held since 2010. Agricultural meetings have been conducted in 2011-12. Meetings of foreign ministers were held from 2012 and 13. Trade ministers met from 2012 and 2014. In 2012, G20 meeting focused on tourism as a means to job creation. In 2016, the G20 framed its commitment to the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development Goals in three key themes: the promotion of strong, sustainable and balanced growth, protection of the planet, furthering cooperation with low-income and developing countries. In 2022, Indonesia focused on the global COVID-19 pandemic, on global health architecture, digital transformations, and sustainable energy transitions. India holds the G20 presidency with the theme One Earth, One Family, One Future. As of 2023, the composition of group has remained unchanged since it was established. Because of the objectives of G20, it was considered important that countries and regions of systemic significance for the international financial system be included. Aspects such as geographical balance and population representation also played a major part. The G20 agenda is balanced and sustainable growth through sustaining intra-regional trade and stimulating domestic demand. It was focused on the sustainability of sovereign debt and global financial stability in an inclusive format that would bring in the largest developing economies as equal partners. The recurring themes covered by G20 summit participants have related in priority to global economic growth. The G20 engagement groups are independent collectives that are led by organizations of host country. They represent a diverse group of stakeholders and work collectively to develop non-binding policy recommendations formally submitted. This year, there are 13 Startup 20 and other few engagement groups initiated under the G20 India presidency of 2023 will be seen. G20 is undoubtedly the premier intergovernmental forum for international economic cooperation, which plays an important role in shaping and strengthening global architecture and governance on all major international economic issues. The G20 consists of two parallel tracks, Finance Track and Sherpa Track. Finance ministers and central bank governors lead the Finance Track, while Sherpas, that emissaries of the chairman, lead the Sherpa Track. Within the two tracks, there are thematically oriented working groups in which representatives from the relevant ministries of the members, as well as from invited guest countries and various international organizations participate. In addition, there are engagement groups which bring together civil societies, parliamentarians, think tanks, women, youth, labor, business and researchers of the G20 countries. The Startup 20 engagement group will be established under India's G20 presidency for the first time, recognizing the role of startups in driving innovation that responds to a rapidly changing global scenario. Active consultation with engagement groups forms an integral part of India's inclusive, ambitious, decisive, and action-oriented G20 approach, as outlined by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the Bali summit this year. The 6 priorities of the G20 have been enumerated by the ambassador before you. In the words of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he said in Bali, can we catalyze a fundamental mindset shift to benefit humanity as a whole?
I believe we can. He further said, one such tradition popular in India sees all living beings and even inanimate things as composed of the same basic five elements, the Panchatattva of earth, water, fire, air and space. Harmony among these elements within us and between us is essential for our physical, social and environmental well-being. We have leveraged technology to create digital public goods that are open, inclusive and interoperable. These have delivered revolutionary progress in fields as varied as social protection, financial inclusion and electronic payments. India's experience can provide insights for possible global solutions. He further said, our priorities will focus on healing our one earth, creating harmony within our one family, and giving hope for our one future. Let us work together to shape a new paradigm of human-centric globalization. India kick-started its presidency term agenda with a series of cultural initiatives that included various Jan Bhagidari activities. This activity, the Special University Connect event, the lighting up of ASI monuments with the G20 logo and colors in the ASI monuments, and showcasing G20 at various events. Various other events, youth activities, cultural performances, and site excursions showcasing the sites and traditions of respective city venues are also planned throughout the year. Recently, the G20 Development Working Group meeting was held in Mumbai from December 13 to 16, 2022, wherein there were sessions on data for development, role of G20 in advancing the 2030 agenda, infusing new life into green development, and accelerating progress on SDGs. Also, the Indian presidency hosted the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting in two very productive sessions which covered various dimensions of international cooperation. These two sessions during the meeting and the discussions ranged from strengthening multilateralism, ensuring food and energy security, and development cooperation. The second session was on counter-terrorism, global skill mapping, humanitarian assistance and disaster response, as well as women-led development. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, India's G20 presidency will work to promote this universal sense of oneness, hence our theme, one earth, one family, and one future. आगे हम 5 ट्रिलियन की इकोनॉमी बनना चाहते हैं। हम चाहते हैं कि देश के जो अंतिम छोर पर बैठा व्यक्ति है वो तक आर्थिक रूप से सशक्त हो। हम चाहते हैं कि हमारा देश सशक्त हो, विश्व में हमारी आवाज सुनी जाए। वो तभी होगा जब हम में से हर एक प्रयास करेगा देश को सशक्त बनाने में, ज्ञान को अर्जित करने में और उस ज्ञान को व्यवहारिक रूप लाने में। थैंक यू। वंदे मातरम।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर सुगवान सर। मैं अब इसी कड़ी में स्पेशल रिमार्क के लिए यहाँ पर आमंत्रित कर रहा हूँ आगरा कॉलेज आगरा के भौतिक शास्त्र के प्रोफेसर गौरव मिश्रा जी को। प्लीज आइए और अपने विचार रखिए।
सरस्वती महाभागे विद्ये कमललोचने विद्यारूपे विशालाक्षी विद्यां देहि नमोस्तुते. A very good afternoon to all the luminaries present on the stage, all the renowned professors, academicians, and blooming Zen City students present in the auditorium. First of all, I am thankful to all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be a part of G20 University Connect Engaging Young Minds lecture series. Since already much has been beautifully deliberated by Ambassador G.S. Mukul sir and Professor Sugamanand sir, therefore I will only share a few inputs on education as a guiding light for a shared vision of G20. As the new millennium beckoned on this planet, no country holds as much promise for the future as India, a land of rich values, vast culture, variety of climate, and immensely talented youth. India is a microcosm for the world, and India's G20 presidency will work to promote this universal sense of oneness. Hence our theme, One Earth, One Family, One Future, is on the principles of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Taken from Maha-Upanishad, chapter 6, verse 71. Ayam mejaha palope garana laguchetasam udar charitanam tu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, based on the philosophy of oneness and wholeness. To be human is to grow at a cognitive level the interconnectedness of life and constantly strive to expand our well-being against all odds. To achieve this, we need understandings, agreements, and solutions on a grand scale which points towards the importance of G20 as a multilateral platform. This is for the first time broadening the G20 umbrella. PM has called upon more than 125 developing countries of Global South to share their perspectives and priorities on a common platform called the Voice of Global South Summit under the theme of Unity of Voice, Unity of Purpose. Education does not mean accumulation of knowledge from various resources. Quality education shapes the personality of the student, builds character, and cultivates life skills. The need today
is to harness the potential of our youth, build character, and to give them a positive direction, preparing them to face the world and find their place under the sun. On the other hand, the industry and the corporate sector requires a new breed of professionals who can invent, innovate, manage, and provide effective leadership to face the new challenges thrown up by latest technologies and global economic integration. This is only possible through education, the magic potion. India's G20 presidency is not a mere event. It imbibes the concept of creating global citizens and is about working together to create a cleaner, healthier, peaceful, technologically competent, yet sustainably developed world. And our education and skills has a vital role to this. NEP, as the curtain raiser of G20 educational goals, is based on the foundational principles of access, equity, quality, affordability, and accountability, and is India's guiding light for achieving the shared vision of G20. The spirit of NEP 2020 will be reflected through events, discussions, and shared informations with 4 priority issues. These are a role of digital technology in education, strengthening research collaboration, building capacities for the future of work, and ensuring foundational literacy and numeracy. The meetings under India's presidency is an opportunity to share what the country has achieved in the education sector, particularly after the launch of NEP 2020. G20 Educational Working Group will be discussing these focal areas of education in order to bridge the gaps in quality education and skilling. It will focus on identifying this problem in education and find the solution with global collaboration. This group comprises of secretaries from higher education, secondary education, skill development and entrepreneurship, other educational officials, delegates of G20 members, and members of UNICEF, UNESCO, etc. The first EWG meet was held at IIT Madras, based on the theme, Role of Digital Technology in Education. The significant highlights of this meeting were: the first, after COVID pandemic, India has already begun working on technology-driven education to meet the students' diverse needs. In 2023 budget, Center has taken an innovative step to set up National Digital Library to facilitate the availability of quality books, articles, videos, audios, theses, and other relevant materials. Center has proposed to set up 3 centers of excellence in artificial intelligence in top institutions to help realize the vision of Make AI in India and Make AI for India. In this continuation, the second EWG meet was held at Khalsa College, Amritsar, based on the theme Strengthening Research and Promoting Innovation through Richer Collaboration and Partnership. The highlights of this meet are the importance of communities' involvement in student education and urgency of greater collaborations and partnerships were highlighted. Expecting faster collaboration across higher education institutions to create workable solutions to meet the sustainable development goals and to identify and address the problems that inhibit effective academic research collaborations. The third EWG meet was held at CSIR IIMT Bhubaneswar on the theme Building Capacities for Lifelong Learning in the Context of Future of Work. The highlights are to make education institutions all over the world ready for the future course of action related to the issues of labor market and skill development. Equip youth with skills and attitudes to adopt to emerging work ecosystem. Example, megatrends such as AI, Industry 4.0 and Web 3.0, which will impact the workplace. Detailed discussions were made on skill architecture and governance models. The fourth and the final EWG meet is proposed at Pune on the theme Ensuring Foundational Literacy and Numeracy, especially in context of blending learning. It will be held between June 19 and June 21st. India has presented a new template of education which can be a global model for all emerging economies and will make the world aware of the contributions of Indian knowledge. Thus, education, educator, and educand are isomeric to Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. All 3 of these have their distinct place in society. Good coordination among these leads to a glorious culture, which is the basis of establishment of higher ideals and achievement of greater objectives. So, it is only pupil and mentor that together can bring incredible revolution in the field of education and can be the leading stone of a better society. With this I remain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Gaurang, for having a wonderful overview and a special remark on the lecture series of the G20. I am really thankful to you. Now there is a question-answer session, and if you are having any question related to this G20 Connect, you may ask. जितने भी लोग हमारे ऑडियंस में बैठे हुए हैं, अगर उनको कोई G20 से रिलेटेड कोई अगर उनके मन में कोई विचार, कोई प्रश्न अगर आ रहा है, तो उनका स्वागत है. हाथ में. Yes.
Sir, G20. My name is Rubalgar, and I am an MSc student from Department of Chemistry. My question is, how G20 is beneficial for science field? How G20 is beneficial for science field? Science field.
So as I pointed out, G20 has today taken on almost everything. It's a Christmas tree approach, and education was mentioned in the last presentation. Science and technology is very much part of it. Digital technology I raised. In the education working group, you have seen how AI and other things are being taken forward. So the idea is to take forward all areas, all the SDGs. Education in general, science and technology will be focused there. India's priority is digital transformation. So in that sense, the idea is not just for the G20 countries, but also for the global south. And many of the Indian models are more suited for the global south than, say, the Western models. So that is what is our objective.
Thank you, sir.
Just a minute. One more thing that I want to add is that very recently India has also cleared a huge and pending research related in the field of quantum technology. As we are well aware that quantum technology and quantum mechanics is not only related with physics or chemistry, it has taken almost each and every sector of life, leading from quantum telepathy to quantum computation to quantum web protection also. So that is also one of the major factors which is really beneficial to all our youths in the field of quantum technology. Thank you. Please.
Good afternoon, sir and ma'am. Myself, Sharon Gupta, Department of Chemistry. My question is, what is the role of India as a global south?
No, as I said in my presentation, India has all along been a leading member of the global south. We had organizations like G77, G15 and others. We were not accepted, the South, not just India, the South as equal partners. Now today we are in the G20 as equal partners, and it's broadly balanced between around 20, out of 20 you can say broadly 10 and 10. Developed countries or industrialized countries and developing or emerging. The point which was made is that India is here in the G20 not just representing India, but should also try to take forward the views of the global south. That is why the Honorable Prime Minister at the very beginning of our presidency convened the Voice of the Global South Summit in order to get the views of the other leaders of the Global South, which could be then factored in and represented or taken forward by India. So yes, the Indian priorities really, the cross-cutting Indian priority is the global South's interest, and when in the 6 specific priorities that I pointed out, each one of them has great salience or importance for the global South.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to share a speech with you. My name is Vishal Singh and I am from Computer Science Engineering. Vasudev Kutumbakam, one family. So it's a big state to say. In the world, no other country can even imagine that something like that can happen. Someone can think that world is one family. So we have to bring it up, and it's our duty to prove it, to show the world, because the other countries is not going to get on this idea by their own. We have to push it hard. So as students, what is our role to push this idea? Push this idea in the world that world is one family. What we can do if we go out in the country, how as we students can promote this? Thank you.
I think a very good question. Basically, we are trying to engage people at 2 levels. One is of course the G20 and all the countries, the foreign countries, and there of course we are trying to teach them our traditional ethos, as you pointed out rightly, the Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and all that comes with that. So that is at one level, educating them. And internally, the idea is to take this to as many segments of our society as possible. We have 11 engagement groups. Now, what are these engagement groups? They are the Y20, the U20, the B20, Business 20, the various groups are there. So this is the whole purpose of taking them. I mean, students come under the Y20, the Youth Connect. So try to take it to as many, and these kind of outreach programs are sensitizing you on the broad aspects of the G20, so that, while I was told your university in a way has 4 lakh students, but we can only address a few hundred here. So the point is that when you meet your colleagues, you meet others, please tell them about the India's G20 presidency, the priorities that we are having, and in that sense, you will also be contributing to the common purpose of India, as also the traditional ethos of Vasudeva Kutumbakam.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, this is Ardaman Singh Jadon from Department of Social Work. Sir, my question is, as we can see that in today's day and age, when there is war going on between Russia and Ukraine, so what is the role of a country like India to maintain the peace in world, and the time of the presidency that India has this time? So what is the role that India can play to maintain the peace order and carry a way forward for the world?
You have actually asked 2 questions. One is at the G20 level. It is the premier forum for international economic cooperation, as has been underlined repeatedly. So the G20 per se will deal with the economic crisis emanating including out of Ukraine. I refer to the food crisis because of the unilateral sanctions. We were having problems. The fertilizer crisis, which was also impacted. The energy crisis, because you can't, again due to sanctions, etc. So those are directly relevant to be addressed. The second part of your question is, what can India do? Whether the G20 can do or not, I don't know, because the United Nations itself has not been able to do. So, as our External Affairs Minister has said, the G20 should be G20. It is not to resolve every problem of the world. If it can resolve the economic, the financial, the banking, those problems, that itself will be a big thing. And it has today expanded, covering all aspects in the larger context, the economic way. As far as India is concerned, we have made clear we are talking to both sides. It's really for them to seek our good offices, and I'm sure in case they seek India's good offices, they will be available to try but really it is for the 2 parties to settle their problem with themselves. India is there. We are in a position to talk to everybody, as I mentioned. We are in a position to engage with everybody. We have not taken sides, and that I think is something to be. We bring value in that sense to the table, and that is. But really, it is for them to solve their problems or to seek external help if they want from anybody, including India.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Vishnu Vivek Singh from Department of Mathematics. So I have 2 questions to ask. So as we know, we are organizing G20 summit first time in India. So what was the reasons that हम अब तक नहीं कर पाए, पहली बार ये कर रहे हैं? And second question is that is it sufficient that whole the world can represent in only G20? Like in G20 there are only 20 members. So how we can say that we are organizing kind of a program where we are talking about Vasudeva Kutumbakam, because there are only 20 countries who can represent them here. So this is my question.
Well, very good questions. First, the G20 came into being at the summit level only in 2008. 2008 में US ने किया, 2009 और 10 में ग्रेट रिसेशन था, इसलिए 2 समिट हुए. 2011 के बाद से एक समिट हुआ. 17 समिट हो चुके हैं, अब हमारा 18वां. It does not rotate alphabetically. There is a bucket system in G20. We have 5 buckets which have 4 countries each, which the idea is that it should alternate between developing and developed countries. You have asked this question, so I will explain this, but the first 4 summits of the G20 were all developed countries. The first one in USA, second in UK, third again in USA, fourth in Canada. So then it was only, so first 4 were there. So some of the developing countries are now holding, like now the next 4 summits continuously, Indonesia, India, Brazil and then South Africa will be in developing countries. So that's a bit of a distortion which happened because of the Great Recession, the crisis. So it is one country's turn will come only after 19 years because it's a G20 and now it's an annual summit. तो साल में एक ही बार होता है, EU करता नहीं है समिट, तो 19 होंगे, हम लोग 18वां है, ब्राजील 19 करेगा और साउथ अफ्रीका 20वां करेगा, उसके बाद ये एक साइकिल क्लोज हो जाएगी. यूएस ने 2 कर लिए शुरू में 2008 and 2009 because of the crisis. So that is the first part of your question. The second part क्या था? What is it that why? अच्छा, why it's only 20? No. As has been pointed out, it may be only 20. 193 members of the United Nations, you are absolutely right. That is why I keep underlining that we will not to replicate the United Nations and the G20 should not try to do everything under the sun. The basic thing is the premier forum. It came into being to address financial crisis, economic crisis, great recession, and it addressed it very successfully. Today we are again in many such crises we are facing: energy crisis, food crisis, fertilizer, debt, climate, etc. And these are the crises that we should be trying to address. To your question, the weight of the heft, while it is only 20 countries, we have been fighting for the form of the United Nations, including expansion of Security Council. The Security Council is only 15 members, and there also the real veto power is only with the 5 permanent members. So they cannot be taking the decisions for the world. So it has to be. That is why, as I pointed out, we have invited the largest number of guests in our presidency. There will be, though it is 20 members, there will be 43 leaders round the table in September when the summit happens in Delhi. The second thing to note is the weight of the organization. 85% of global GDP is represented, 75% of international trade, 67% or 2/3 of the population, and 50% of the land mass. Now this is also important. And we are very conscious of the fact that others are not represented, and that is why Honorable Prime Minister did the Summit of the Global South to take on views of those countries which are left out. Also, it is not just 20. EU stands for 28 countries by itself. So actually, with EU, there are 45 or so countries in the G20, plus the guests, so it's already coming to around 60. So the remaining 120 or so, which our Prime Minister tried to address through the voice of the Global Summit. So really, it is trying to represent the interests, the common interests, or the crisis of the whole world.
Thank you very much, Mukul Saab, for a nice answering of all the questions. Now, this is the time for the student presentation. So in this direction, I am just going to call one of the students from MSW department, Mr. Rahul. Please come over here.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashurani Ma'am, Mr. J.S. Mukul Sir, Mr. Sayyid Ali Sir, Professor Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Ajay Taneja Sir, Professor Gaurang Mishra Sir, Professor Sanjeev Kumar Sir, and Professor Sugam Anand Sir, all the teachers and dear friends, a very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Rahul, student of Master of Social Work, Institute of Social Sciences, Harvard. Excellencies, it is indeed a great pleasure to welcome you all and to speak before you.
Thank you all for being here. Excellencies, our world is facing the most pivotal and precarious moment in generations. People everywhere are getting hit from every direction, battered by a runaway climate change and squeezed by a cost of living crisis. Geopolitical divisions are triggering new conflicts and making the old ones even more difficult to resolve. The G20 is a ground zero for bridging divisions and finding answers to these crises and more. The architecture of global governance created after the Second World War was to serve two functions. First, to prevent future wars by balancing competing interests. Second, to foster international cooperation on issues of common interest. The experience of the past few years, financial crisis, climate change, pandemic, terrorism, and wars, clearly shows that global governance has failed in both its mandate. We must also admit that the tragic consequences of these failures are faced most by developing nations. Many developing countries are struggling with unsustainable debt while trying to ensure food and energy security for their people. They are also the ones most affected by global warming caused by richer countries. This is why India's G20 presidency has tried to give a voice to the global south. No group can claim global leadership without listening to those most affected by its decisions. The world looks up to the G20 to ease the challenges of growth, development, economic resilience, disaster resilience, financial stability, transnational crime, corruption, terrorism, and food and energy security. In all these areas, the G20 has capacity to build consensus and to deliver concrete results. Excellencies, digital transformation is the remarkable change of our era. The proper use of digital technologies can become a force multiplier in the long decades of global fight against poverty. Digital solutions can also be used in the fight against climate change. It is the responsibility of G20 leaders that the benefits of digital transformation should not be confined to a small part of the human race. India's experience of the past few years has shown that if we make digital infrastructure inclusive, it can bring about socio-economic transformation. Digital use can bring scale and speed. Transparency can be brought to the governance. India has developed digital public goods whose basic architecture has inbuilt democratic principles. India is now returning to her rightful place in the global order. With the world grappling with multiple crises, India's presidency of the G20 comes at a critical juncture. We were already amid a climate crisis, and the lack of progress on our sustainable development goals was evident. COVID-19 has compounded the distress. The impact of the pandemic has sent most developed economies hurtling towards recession in 2023. As the global economy stutters, India has emerged a bright spot. Our mode of development has rightfully come under the spotlight. Our digital public goods, combined with economic reforms, investment in physical and human capital, and efforts to decarbonize have resonated globally. Moreover, the Prime Minister's message that today's era is not one of war resonated globally and was reflected in the final G20 declaration. India played a crucial role in the final G20 declaration in Bali. The negotiations were tough and complex, owing a deadlock over a paragraph on geopolitics. India is a key in bridging gaps between developed and developing nations. In making the statement focused on economic growth and issues faced by developing countries, the final statement come with consensus of all G20 countries, a major breakthrough. Our efforts in Bali were lauded globally and have set the stage for our presidency. The essence of India's G20 presidency, one Earth, one family, one future, will be reflected in our priorities. India's presidency will be ambitious, inclusive, decisive, and action-oriented. Inclusive growth and realization of sustainable development goals are high on the agenda. Resilient, reliable, and diversified supply chains for food and energy will be brought into focus. Issues such as sustainable development goals, finance, energy transition, and climate finance, digital transformation, to which the developed world has committed $100 billion since 2009, will also be high on the agenda, along with the aspects of lifestyle for environment. India's successful digital infrastructure model can hold valuable lessons for the world. Leveraging this infrastructure is India's unique health model, which include platforms such as CoWIN. The National Digital Health Mission is another unique initiative. These initiatives have been built in India's strong manufacturing base in pharmaceuticals. Indian companies were able to quickly scale up and provide billions of doses of COVID vaccines. This only adds up to India's credentials as a leading manufacturer of pharmaceuticals, enabling access for the developing world. The power of women-led development will also be brought into focus during our presidency. Among India's unique contribution to the G20 will be the constitution of a new working group on disaster, risk and resilience. A new engagement group has been constituted for startups. India has seen phenomenal success with startups, solving not just economic but also social issues. Multilateral reform will also be brought to the table. Public finance will not be enough to bridge the investment gaps faced by developing countries in their green transitions. Private capital will have to be mobilized. However, that requires enabling policy and regulators. The G20 presidency is an opportunity to solidify India's image as a world leader. In an increasingly polarized world, building consensus seems like a tough order. However, through our intervention in Bali, we have demonstrated leadership and emerged as a consensus builders. The world is now looking to India to chart a new course of development and prosperity. New India is ready to take up this mantle and lead the world on a path of sustainable and inclusive growth. India's G20 presidency is a proud occasion for every Indian, and that the country is on the path of prosperity. We wish that all of you will participate in this unique celebration in India, the mother of democracy. Together, we will make G20 a catalyst for a global change. In closing, I would reiterate that no matter how hard the challenges, we must move forward together. It is only by acting as one family, do we stand any chance to succeed. And succeed, we must for our future generations. I recently studied an article somewhere that India's green financing requirement is estimated to be at least 2.5% of GDP annually till 2030, an RBI report said. The report covers areas like unprecedented scale and pace of climate change, its macroeconomic effects, implications for financial stability, and policy options to mitigate climate risks. India aims to achieve net zero emissions target by 2070. India is ready to make the ambitious DWG outcomes. a G20's gift to the world. I thank you all for your presence today, and I hope that under the able leadership of G20 leaders, we will arrive at a strong consensus very soon. India's celebration of its G20 presidency can be seen a demonstration of its emerging soft power, as it showcases the country's growing influence and reputation on the global stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rahul, for nice insight, your views, your ideas, your opinion about the G20. My best wishes are always with you. Now, in the next direction, I am just going to call Ms. Pooja Yadav. She is from Department of Sociology. She is going to present her views on G20.
मैं उस देश की नागरिक हूँ जहाँ छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज और सम्राट अशोक जैसा राजा था। मैं उस देश की नागरिक हूँ जहाँ हर 50 मील पर रूप, महजब और पहनावा बदल जाता था। मैं उस देश की नागरिक हूँ जहाँ डाल डाल पर सोने की चिड़िया को पाया जाता था। मैं उस देश की नागरिक हूँ जहाँ अपने भूगोल से पहले इस ब्रह्मांड का भूगोल समझ आता था। A very good afternoon to Vice Chancellor Ma'am, to Vice Chancellor Sir, and Mr. Mukul Sir, Ali Sir, and all honorable person of the university. This is Pooja Yadav from Institution of Social Sciences, Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar University. भारत 1.3 मिलियन लोगों का घर है, जो कि विभिन्न धर्मों, रीति रिवाजों और परंपराओं का संगम है। एक संपन्न वैश्विक टेक्नोलॉजी का केंद्र है और विश्व के सबसे बड़े लोकतंत्र के साथ साथ दुनिया की सबसे पुरानी सभ्यताओं में से एक है, जो संस्कृति, विरासत और विविधता के साथ साथ दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी 5वीं अर्थव्यवस्था है। G20 2023 की अध्यक्षता भारत को मिलना भारत के लिए बहुत ही गर्व की बात है, जिसे पाकर भारत इस नए युग में अपनी नई पहचान लेकर उभरेगा और विश्व भर की चुनौतियों पर विजय हासिल कर मानवता को प्रोत्साहित करेगा। कमल भारत का राष्ट्रीय पुष्प है, जो हमारी संस्कृति, विरासत और इतिहास को दर्शाता है, जिसे भारत ने G20 के लोगों का प्रेरणा ली है। इस लोगों में सैफरन, वाइट, ग्रीन एंड ब्लू रंगों का प्रयोग किया गया है, जो भारत के तिरंगे से लिए गए हैं। इस लोगों में कमल की 7 पत्तियां 7 सागरों को दर्शाती हैं और G20 सम्मेलन में 7 कॉन्टिनेंट को एक साथ जोड़ने का प्रतीक देती हैं। अयनिच परो व्यक्ति गणना लघुचेत साम उदार चरिताना तू वसुदैव कुटुंबकम। उपनिषद में लिखे इस श्लोक का अर्थ है, यह अपना है, यह पराया है। ऐसी सोच को छोटे हृदय वाले लोग रखते हैं। उदार चरित्र वाले लोग संपूर्ण पृथ्वी को अपने परिवार के समान मानते हैं। वसुदैव कुटुंबकम को आधार मानकर भारत G20 की अध्यक्षता कर रहा है। G20 20 देशों का समूह है, जो पूरे विश्व की 60% जनसंख्या, 75% व्यापार और 50% GDP का प्रतिनिधित्व करते हैं। इन देशों में से प्रत्येक देश को G20 की अध्यक्षता का अवसर प्रदान किया जाता है। G20 के इन देशों से पहले एक ग्रुप हुआ करता था G7। इसमें मुख्य विकसित देशों का नाम था, जिसमें पश्चिमी देश थे, जो सिर्फ अपनी आर्थिक स्थिति और विकास को सर्वोपरि मानते थे। लेकिन विश्व के किसी भी कोने में हुआ हादसा, चाहे वो आर्थिक हो, राजनीतिक हो, चाहे वो भौगोलिक हो, पूरे विश्व को प्रभावित करता है। उदाहरण के लिए 2008 की आर्थिक मंदी, जो अमेरिका में हुई, लेकिन उसने पूरे विश्व को प्रभावित किया। ऐसा ही एक हादसा हुआ 1997 में, जो दक्षिण एशिया की आर्थिक मंदी थी, जिसकी शुरुआत थाईलैंड से हुई और उसने पूरे विश्व को प्रभावित किया। G20 जिसे आधिकारिक तौर पर 20 वित्त मंत्रियों और सेंटर बैंक गवर्नर के समूह के रूप में जाना जाता है। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय वित्तीय ढांचे को मजबूत करने, वैश्विक स्तर पर आर्थिक विकास को बढ़ावा देने के लिए इन समूहों का उद्घाटन 1999 में बर्लिन में आयोजित किया गया था। G20 में अर्जेंटीना, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, ब्राजील, कनाडा, चीन, फ्रांस, जर्मनी, भारत, इंडोनेशिया, इटली, जापान, कोरिया गणतंत्र, मैक्सिको, रूस, सऊदी अरब, दक्षिण अफ्रीका, तुर्की, यूनाइटेड किंगडम, संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका एवं यूरोपीय यूनियन जैसे देश शामिल हैं। G20 का एजेंडा चलाने की जिम्मेदारी 3 देशों के पास होती है, जिसमें भूतकालीन अध्यक्षता कर चुका देश, अध्यक्षता कर रहा देश और अध्यक्षता करने वित्त जैसे मुद्दे शामिल हैं। और सेकंड सेफर ट्रैक, जिसमें जलवायु परिवर्तन, कृषि और खाद्य सुरक्षा, संयुक्त राज्य सतत विकास एवं स्वास्थ्य देखभाल में सुधार जैसे मुद्दे शामिल हैं। भारत ने G20 की अध्यक्षता में कुछ लक्ष्य बनाए हैं, जैसे भारत 200 से अधिक बैठकों का आयोजन करेगा, जिसमें 32 अलग अलग क्षेत्र भाग लेंगे। G20 की अध्यक्षता के कारण भारत को कुछ शक्तियां प्राप्त होंगी, जैसे भारत उन देशों को आमंत्रित कर सकता है जो G20 का भाग नहीं है। भारत ने UAE को अतिथि के रूप में आमंत्रित किया है। साथ ही बांग्लादेश, इजिप्ट, मॉरिशस, नीदरलैंड, नाइजीरिया, ओमान, सिंगापुर और इसमें जैसे देशों को भी G20 का हिस्सा बनाया है। सामान्यतः लोगों का मानना है कि G20 की प्रेसिडेंसी मिलना कुछ बड़ी बात नहीं है, लेकिन इस प्रेसिडेंसी को किस तरह निभाना है और किस तरह क्रियान्वित करना है, यह सबसे ज्यादा जरूरी है। चलो एक उदाहरण लेते हैं। हाल ही में हुए 2022 में फीफा वर्ल्ड कप का, जो कतर में आयोजित किया गया था। कतर ने इस फीफा वर्ल्ड कप के लिए सबसे महंगा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर यूज किया, जो दुनिया का सबसे महंगा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर था। तो क्या फीफा द्वारा, कतर द्वारा ये इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर यूज करना कोई उनके लिए फायदेमंद हो सकता था? हो सकता है उन्हें घाटा भी हो, लेकिन यह उनके लिए एक अपॉर्चुनिटी थी दुनिया को बताने की कि वो क्या है, वो अपनी सभ्यता से पूरी दुनिया को रूबरू करा सकता था। ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली है भारत को G20 की अध्यक्षता पाकर। जब दुनिया कहीं नकारात्मकता देख लेती है तो वह सोचती है कि यहाँ कुछ अच्छा हो ही नहीं सकता, लेकिन सच तो ये है कि बिना संघर्ष के विकास नहीं होता। हमारा फाइनेंशियल टेक्नोलॉजी दुनिया में सबसे अधिक है, लेकिन हमारे एडवांस हम दुनिया को दिखाई नहीं पाते और अपनी कमजोरियों पर केंद्रित हो जाते हैं। लेकिन G20 के माध्यम से पूरी दुनिया को बता सकती है कि भारत न केवल एक बड़ा मार्केट है, बल्कि प्रतिस्पर्धी ताकत भी है, जो पूरी दुनिया को हिलाकर रख सकता है। भारत में कोरोना के कारण ग्लोबल ऑर्डर पलट गया। दूसरी ओर रूस और यूक्रेन के युद्ध के कारण अनेक समस्याएं सामने आने लगी। यूरोपीय देशों में अब ऊर्जा सुरक्षा नहीं है, इसलिए वो कोयला, तेल और गैस आदि का प्रयोग कर रहे हैं। रूस और यूक्रेन दोनों ही गेहूं के बेहतरीन उत्पादक हैं, इसलिए युद्ध के कारण खाद्य संकट के मुद्दे सामने आ रहे हैं। आज भारत के पास मौका है इस सारे मुद्दों को सामने लाने का, अपनी कहानी पूरी दुनिया को बताने का और न्याय संगत समाधानों को सही दिशा में ले जाने का। कुछ ही दिनों पहले भारत में ऑल पार्टी मीटिंग हुई, जिसमें सभी दलों के नेता मौजूद थे। तब एक मुद्दा बढ़कर सामने आया कि आंतरिक राजनीति में अलग अलग विपक्षी हो सकते हैं, लेकिन दुनिया के सामने यूनाइटेड भारत को सामने आना है, क्योंकि इसलिए सभी नागरिकों का हित है। हाल ही में उदयपुर में हुई G20 की बैठक, जहां अलग अलग देशों के नेताओं ने हमारी जीवन संस्कृति के साथ साथ हमारे डिजिटल पेमेंट की क्रांति को भी अनुभव किया। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय गणमान्य व्यक्तियों ने UPI का प्रयोग करके देखा और उन्होंने जाना कि UPI कितना सिंपल है। इस सिंपल सी गति से शायद UPI को अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बनने में सहायता मिल सकती है। भारत की G20 की अध्यक्षता प्राथमिकताएं हरित क्रांति, जलवायु, वित्त पर लाइट है। भारत दुनिया को लाइफस्टाइल और एनवायरमेंट का एक व्यवहार आधारित आंदोलन प्रदान करता है, जो हमारे देश के समृद्ध प्राचीन स्थायी परंपराओं से उपभोक्ताओं को आकर्षित करता है। G20 की प्रेसिडेंसी के दौरान भारत का लक्ष्य उन क्षेत्रों पर ध्यान केंद्रित करना है जिनमें संरचनात्मक परिवर्तन लिए जा सकते हैं। G20 प्रेसिडेंसी भारत के लिए अपनी क्षमताओं को प्रस्तुत करने का एक अच्छा अवसर है और अपनी सफलता को पूरे विश्व के सामने प्रस्तुत करने का भी सुनहरा अवसर है। इन छोटी सी चार पत्नियों के साथ मैं अपने विचार को बयान देना चाहूंगी। वन पार्ट तू अब युद्ध कर, दुश्मन को अपने शुद्ध कर, दिखा अपराक्रम, काल को भी मग्न मुक्त कर, कुछ कर अलेख विशेष कर, सांस आखिरी जब तक शेष कर, उठ कर तू पुनः युद्ध कर, अपना वजूद सिद्ध कर। धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद इस MA सोशोलॉजी की छात्रा के लिए, और मैं चाहता हूं कि एक बार पुनः कर्तव्य ध्वनि से छात्रा का स्वागत किया जाए। दोनों छात्र छात्रा का प्रेजेंटेशन जो था वो वाकई ऐसा था कि जिसने मन को अभिभूत कर दिया। दोनों ने अपनी भाषा बहुत संतुलित रखी और समय का बहुत ध्यान रखा। मैं आप दोनों को हार्दिक धन्यवाद देता हूं। मैं अब इस कड़ी में G20 के कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर लकुश मिश्रा जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वह अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन दें।
धन्यवाद प्रोफेसर संजीव जी। आज की इस कार्यक्रम की अध्यक्षता कर रही माननीय कुलपति प्रोफेसर आशु रानी मैडम, आज के हमारे इस कार्यक्रम के मुख्य अतिथि श्रीमान मुकुल जी,
आज के जो G20 का कार्यक्रम पूरे देश में हो रहा है, ऐसे कंसल्टेंसी से आए हुए सैयद अली साहब, मंचासीन प्रोफेसर सुमानंद जी, प्रो वाइस चांसलर प्रोफेसर अजय तलेजा जी, डॉक्टर गौरांग मिश्रा जी, आवासीय शिक्षक संघ के अध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर शरद उपाध्याय जी, महामंत्री प्रोफेसर बीपी सिंह जी और इस सभागार में उपस्थित हमारे सभी शिक्षक साथी, मीडिया के बंधु एवं छात्रों, हम लोग G20 की पूरे देश में सेलिब्रेशन कर रहे हैं। बहुत कुछ हमें भी सीखने का मौका मिला। कुछ चीजें जो एज ए शिक्षक, एज ए नागरिक हमारे भी जानकारी में नहीं थी, वह धीरे धीरे तमाम मीटिंग्स में, वर्कशॉप में हमारे भी जानकारी में पहली बार आई। जानकारी कह सकते हैं या उसे दूसरी भाषा में समझ कह सकते हैं कि हमारी भी समझ बढ़ी है। जैसे जब मैराथन हो रहा था, वॉकाथन हो रहा था, तो जिला प्रशासन के साथ हम मीटिंग में रजिस्ट्रार साहब के साथ जाया करते थे, माननीय कुलपति जी के निर्देश पे। तो वहां एक बात आती थी कि ग्राम प्रधान भी दौड़ेंगे, वो भी कबड्डी खेलेंगे, वो भी इन सब चीजों में भाग लेंगे, वहां भी रंगोली बनेगी। तो मेरे समझ में नहीं आता था कि ये G20 का उनसे क्या कनेक्टिविटी, हाउ दे पीपल आर कनेक्टेड। लेकिन सही मायने में यह है कि किसी समाज का जो मार्गदर्शन करता है वो शास्त्र करता है। हमारे शास्त्र में लिखा हुआ है यजुर्वेद में, वयम राष्ट्रे जागृहाम पुरोहिता, हम सभी पुरोहित मिलकर के इस राष्ट्र को जागृत और जीवंत रखेंगे। यह सरकार का प्रयास ही है कि हमारे देश के सभी नागरिक उनमें एक उत्साह हो, वो देश ही की अंतर्राष्ट्रीय जो नीतियां हैं उसको सोचे, समझे और उस स्पिरिट के साथ एक साथ 140 करोड़ जनता साथ में चले। इसीलिए पहले भी मीटिंग हुआ करती थी, G20 नहीं थी तो तमाम अंतर्राष्ट्रीय फोरम की मीटिंग हुआ करती थी, केवल दिल्ली में वो कंसंट्रेटेड होती थी और दिल्ली से ही उनका पूरा समापन भी होता था। पहली बार ये देखने को मिल रहा है कि G20 की मीटिंग देश के पूरे राज्यों और केंद्र शासित प्रदेशों में आयोजित की जा रही है। अभी आप देखिए गोवा में मीटिंग थी विदेश मंत्रियों की, SCO की। तो ये क्या है? ये एक प्रयास है पूरे देश को साथ लेकर चलने की, पूरे देश को एक उत्साह, देश के नागरिकों में उत्साह भरने की। और जैसे हमने अभी यजुर्वेद का बताया, उसी तरीके से वसुधैव कुटुंबकम का भी हमारे शास्त्रों से ही लिया गया है। पश्चिमी सभ्यता और हमारी सभ्यता का मुख्य अंतर यही था, आइडियोलॉजी का। जब आज हम कहते हैं कि भारत विश्व गुरु बनेगा, तो विश्व गुरु कोई अपॉइंटमेंट नहीं होने जा रहा है, बल्कि हमारी आइडियोलॉजी पूरे देश में ही नहीं पूरे विश्व में प्रिवेल करेगी, जिससे पूरी दुनिया संचालित होगी। जब पश्चिम और भारत की बात करते हैं तो वहां पे कंपटीशन है, हमारे यहाँ क्या है? कॉपरेशन है। वहां बाजार की भावना है, हमारे यहाँ परिवार की भावना है। इसीलिए कोविड काल में हमारे देश ने दुनिया के उन गरीब देशों को भी वैक्सीन दिया था जिनके पास पैसा नहीं था, उन्हें निःशुल्क दिया था। ये पारिवारिक भावना ही थी। आज भी जो यूक्रेन और रूस के बीच में हो रहा है, ये बाजार की लड़ाई थी, परिवार में ऐसा नहीं होता। तो हमारे विश्वविद्यालय में भी G20 के तहत अपनी जिम्मेदारियों का निर्वहन करते हुए तमाम कार्यक्रम समाज के लिए, अपने विद्यार्थियों के लिए, अपने एफिलेटेड, क्योंकि हमारी यूनिवर्सिटी मुख्यतः एफिलेटेड यूनिवर्सिटी है, एफिलेशन देती है। एफिलेटेड यूनिवर्सिटी के नेचर होने के कारण सारे कॉलेजों में भी अलग अलग कार्यक्रम, जैसे राज्य सरकार से निर्देश प्राप्त होते थे, सभी महाविद्यालयों में भी कार्यक्रम हुए हैं। आज जो प्रेजेंटेशन आपको दे रहा हूं, ये पूरे कार्यक्रम नहीं बल्कि कुछ सेलेक्टेड कार्यक्रम हैं जो आगरा में रेजिडेंशियल विंग में ऑर्गेनाइज किए गए। सबसे पहले G20 का 12 फरवरी को एक छोटा सा कार्यक्रम यहाँ ये पहले ऑर्गेनाइज किया गया था, जो सबमिट हुई थी 10 से 12 तक थी। 11-12 मेन कार्यक्रम था, लेकिन 10 से डेलीगेट्स आ गए थे। पूरे एयरपोर्ट से लेकर के जो शहर का साज सज्जा है वो हमारे ललित कला के साथियों और विद्यार्थियों के बीच मैंने साझा था, और उन्होंने अपनी जिम्मेदारी का बहुत खूबी से निर्वहन किया। इस बीच हमारे विश्वविद्यालय ने मिल करके वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड भी बनाया ऐसे राइटिंग में, जहां 3 लाख से अधिक लोगों ने पार्टिसिपेट किया। और मजेदार बात यह है कि इस वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड में मुकुल साहब भागीदारी ग्राम प्रधानों की भी थी, केवल छात्रों तक नहीं बल्कि हम लोगों ने ऐसे कोऑर्डिनेट किया था कि विलेज पीपल शुड आल्सो पार्टिसिपेट इन दैट। सो एक जो हमारे विश्वविद्यालय की कनेक्टिविटी विलेज तक थी, आप कह सकते हैं पूरे समाज को लेकर के चलने के लिए। एक छोटा कल्चरल प्रोग्राम पहले 18 जनवरी को इसी सभागार में हुआ। फिर मैराथन, जैसे मैंने बताया मैराथन पहले भी सांसद खेल प्रतिस्पर्धा प्रोग्राम होता था, लेकिन वो लिमिटेड होता था। अब की बार हमारे फिजिकल एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट के छात्रों ने और बाकी अन्य विभागों के छात्रों ने उसमें काफी पार्टिसिपेट किया। मैराथन में उनके साथ काफी कोऑपरेशन से अच्छा प्रोग्राम हुआ 20 जनवरी को। ये कुछ ग्लिम्सेस आप देख सकते हैं, इसमें हमारे सांसद जी भी है, कुलपति महोदय भी है और हमारे स्टूडेंट्स भी हैं, कल्चरल प्रोग्राम दे रहे हैं। ये एकलव्य स्टेडियम में हुआ था डिस्ट्रिक्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के साथ मिलकर। उसके बाद वॉकाथन हुआ था, ये पहली बार इस शहर में आयोजित किया गया था, जहां एकलव्य स्टेडियम से लेकर के आगरा फोर्ट होते हुए ताजमहल की पूर्वी गेट तक पूरा पैदल मार्च हुआ था। उसमें भी हमारे विश्वविद्यालय की सक्रिय भूमिका थी। प्रशासन हमारे साथ था, लेकिन उन सभी का रजिस्ट्रेशन करना, उनको सर्टिफिकेट देना, ये सारे हमारे विश्वविद्यालय ने किया था। रजिस्ट्रेशन भी हमारे कंप्यूटर साइंस विभाग के लोगों ने किया था। ह्यूमन चेन 23 जनवरी को ऑर्गेनाइज किया गया था। आप एक ग्लिम्सेस देख सकते हैं शहर में। ये हमारे छात्र हैं, रजिस्ट्रार साहब भी दिख रहे हैं, हमारे प्रोफेसर अर्चना सिंह जी भी इसमें दिख रही है। सारे छात्र छात्राएं मिल करके हम लोगों ने इसको सफल बनाया था। डिस्ट्रिक्ट एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन भी साथ में था, पुलिस एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, बट दे वर लुकिंग द अदर मैनेजमेंट्स। साइबर क्राइम पे और प्रिवेंशन पे होम साइंस इंस्टीट्यूट ने प्रोफेसर अर्चना गडकर मैडम के नेतृत्व में एक वर्कशॉप ऑर्गेनाइज किया था 25 जनवरी को। ऐसे कंपटीशन एक पूरे शहर में 4 जिले जो हमारे हैं आगरा मंडल के, उनको लेकर के किया गया था, जिसका वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड बना था, लेकिन रेजिडेंशियल विंग में सेपरेट भी किया गया था। और जैसे मैंने बताया वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड के दौरान ऑनरेबल वाइस चांसलर मैडम को मेंटोर और रजिस्ट्रार साहब को चीफ स्टीवर्ड से भी नवाजा गया था। ये आप सर्टिफिकेशन देख सकते हैं जो वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड्स के हैं। ये रियल टाइम फोटोग्राफ से जी समिट के दौरान G20 के समिट में जो डेलीगेट्स थे उनके लिए लाइसेंस ऑफिसर्स के जरूरत थी। प्रशासन ने हमारे विश्वविद्यालय को अप्रोच किया। माननीय कुलपति महोदय ने हम लोगों को निर्देशित किया कि आप हाउ टू बिहेव और अबाउट द सिटी, ये सारी ट्रेनिंग जो है लाइसेंस ऑफिसर्स को दीजिए, क्योंकि प्रशासन के पास इतनी कोई व्यवस्था नहीं होती। तो हमारे डिग्री कॉलेज और रेजिडेंशियल विंग के टीचर्स को हम लोगों ने ट्रेन किया और उनके साथ डिप्यूट किया जो डेलीगेशन आया हुआ था। और चूंकि ये विमेन एम्पावरमेंट का डेलीगेशन था, इसलिए हम लोगों ने एक वर्कशॉप भी किया था, भारत वुमेन लेड सोसाइटी। एक्चुअली पूरी दुनिया विमेन एम्पावरमेंट की बात करती है, लेकिन हमारे यहाँ तो भगवान के समय से अगर बात करिए तो भगवान कृष्ण को भी कहते हैं यशोदानंदन, तो हमारे भगवान श्री राम को कहते हैं कौशल्यानंदन। तो हमारे यहाँ एम्पावरमेंट की कोई बात ही नहीं थी, बल्कि जो सोसाइटी था वो प्राचीन काल से ही वुमेन लेड सोसाइटी थी। ये कॉन्सेप्ट हम लोगों ने लेकर के वर्कशॉप किया था। पोस्टर कंपटीशन एक साइबर हाइजीन पे प्रोफेसर अनिल गुप्ता जी के नेतृत्व में ऑर्गेनाइज किया गया था। पुराने सिक्कों की प्रदर्शनी आगरा में पहली बार लगी थी, जो G20 कार्यक्रम के तहत संस्कृत भवन के आर्ट गैलरी में माननीय कुलपति जी के प्रेरणा से लगी थी। ये आप देख सकते हैं, इससे काफी फुटफॉल्स था, बच्चों में काफी उत्साह था, काफी बच्चे, इवन जो इंटर कॉलेजेस वगैरह स्कूल के बच्चे हैं वो भी काफी आए थे। उनको भी अपने सिक्कों और इन सब के माध्यम से पोस्टर वगैरह के इतिहास को जानने का अवसर मिला था। डिबेट कंपटीशन दीनदयाल उपाध्याय में प्रोफेसर मनोज राठौर जी के नेतृत्व में ऑर्गेनाइज किया गया था, जिसमें शारदा यूनिवर्सिटी से उत्तर प्रदेश सरकार की तरफ से नामित गेस्ट भी आए थे। कल्चरल कार्निवाल लाइफ साइंस के तत्वाधान में प्रोफेसर भूपेंद्र स्वरूप शर्मा जी के नेतृत्व में और डॉक्टर मोनिका अस्थाना और पूरी टीम ने बहुत मेहनत किया था, और इसके अंतर्गत कई कार्यक्रम ऑर्गेनाइज किए गए थे और बहुत ग्रैंड प्रोग्राम था, जिसमें काफी संख्या में लोगों ने भाग लिया था। प्रोफेसर अर्चना गडकर मैडम और प्रोफेसर अर्चना सिंह के नेतृत्व में एक हुनर हाट, जिसमें मिलेट्स के डिशेस तो थी और उनके जो पात्र थे, मीन्स जो बाउल्स और कटोरी वगैरह थी, वो भी ईटेबल थे। They were also ईटेबल, they were made of millets. So that was the inspiration for the students as well as the employees of the university. वो एक अच्छा प्रयास था। ये आप पोस्टर्स वगैरह देख सकते हैं ऑर्गेनाइजिंग कमेटी। ये उद्घाटन सत्र का फोटो है, ये हुनर हाट का फोटो है, वो डिशेस वगैरह सब आप देख सकते हैं, मिलेट्स वगैरह के। रंगोली, ड्राइंग, प्ले, ये सारे कल्चरल इवेंट्स के ही पार्ट्स थे जो ऑर्गेनाइज किए गए थे। क्लस्टर सोलो, ये वैलिडेटरी फंक्शन और अवार्ड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेरेमनी था। एक ओरिएंटेशन प्रोग्राम भी सेठ पदमचंद जैन संस्थान में आयोजित किया गया था, जिसमें प्रोफेसर जी.सी. सक्सेना साहब उत्तर प्रदेश सरकार की तरफ से हमारे चीफ गेस्ट थे। वो हमारे विश्वविद्यालय के पूर्व कुलपति भी रहे थे, और स्टार्टअप पे पूरा प्रोग्राम था। पेंटिंग कंपटीशन का आयोजन ललित कला संस्थान पे किया गया था। डॉक्टर मनोज और बाकी उनकी टीम ने अच्छा प्रोग्राम किया था। एक वर्कशॉप इंडियन इकोनॉमी पे भी हुआ था पदमचंद संस्थान में ही। ऐसे कंपटीशन अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट में ऑर्गेनाइज किया गया था। फैशन शो का आयोजन पुरुषोत्तम मयूरा जी के निर्देशन में इसी सभागार में हुआ था, जिसमें वसुधैव कुटुंबकम फैशन के नाम से उसकी मेन थीम थी। चित्रकला एग्जीबिशन जो नारी सशक्तिकरण में था, उसका भी प्रदर्शनी उस पर लगाई गई थी ललित कला संस्थान के आर्ट गैलरी में 9 फरवरी को। आगरा, पेठा और दालकोट के लिए मुकुल साहब फेमस है, यहाँ पर सोनियर आइटम है। और जो आप पेठा देख रहे हैं, ये पेठे का ही रंगोली है, एक खाने वाला पेठा है। इसको रंगोली बना करके 1.5 क्विंटल लगभग इसमें पेठा लगा था, 143 kg। और उसके बाद छोटे छोटे पैकेट्स में सारे स्टूडेंट्स और कर्मचारी में उसको बांट दिया गया था। जो आप कलर देख रहे हैं, ये सारे इंडियन कलर है, फूड कलर है। और सिंगल पीस पेठा जो आप ट्राई कलर में बगल में देख रहे हैं, वो भी वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड है, क्योंकि इतना बड़ा सिंगल पीस कोई पेठा नहीं था। तो ये दोनों अलग अलग अपने आप में वर्ल्ड रिकॉर्ड है। जैसे मैंने पहले ही कहा कि शहर के सौंदर्यीकरण में हमारे छात्रों का, विशेषकर ललित कला के छात्रों और शिक्षकों का बहुत बड़ा योगदान है। प्रशासन, चूंकि मैं G20 का नोडल ऑफिसर था, तो प्रशासन हमसे लगातार संपर्क में था पूरे शहर की जो बाउंड्री है, चाहे एयरपोर्ट का हो, चाहे शहर मान लो के किनारे का हो, एयरपोर्ट से लेकर के उनके होटल के जो स्टे का वेन्यू था वो पूरा, चाहे मेट्रो का पिलर हो, वो सारे जो ब्यूटिफिकेशन पेंटिंग वगैरह देख रहे हैं वो हमारे ललित कला संस्थान के छात्रों और शिक्षकों के योगदान से। एक चीज इसमें मैंने इंक्लूड नहीं कर पाया हूँ, गणेश कुशवाहा जी खड़े रहे अपनी जगह पे। गणेश कुशवाहा जी है, हाँ, इन्होंने स्क्रैप से बहुत इसमें नहीं इंक्लूड कर पाया हूँ, और पूरे शहर को अब वो सेल्फी पॉइंट बन चुका है। उसमें विभिन्न आकृतियों के माने स्टेच्यू टाइप बनाया हुआ है कबाड़ से पूरा, और बहुत बढ़िया। और वो अखबारों में कई दिन तो वही छपता रहा है, उस पर लोग जा करके सेल्फी करते हैं। ये उनका कंट्रीब्यूशन रहा है। आप हमारे यहाँ ललित कला संस्थान के शिक्षक हैं। और G20 कार्यक्रम के तहत आई टीचर ने, इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ टूरिज्म एंड होटल मैनेजमेंट ने आगरा के जो प्रोडक्ट है और वहाँ के हिस्ट्री के बारे में, विरासत के बारे में एक हफ्ते के 2 ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम चलाए थे MSCB के साथ मिलकर के। माननीय कुलपति जी की प्रेरणा से ये 2 अलग अलग प्रोग्राम थे, एक हफ्ते के प्रोग्राम होते, जिसमें जो यहाँ के प्रोफेशनल्स हैं नए वो जुड़े हुए थे, और दे ऑल आर बेनिफिशियल। एक नेशनल सेमिनार भी ऑर्गेनाइज किया था 18 मार्च को G20 कार्यक्रम के तहत ही, मार्केटिंग ऑफ एडहेसिव प्रोडक्ट्स एंड सर्विसेज। इसमें जो मुख्य वक्ता थे कश्मीरी लाला जी हैं, ये स्वदेशी जनता मंच के राष्ट्रीय संगठक है। अध्यक्षता माननीय कुलपति जी ने किया होगा। पहली बार विश्वविद्यालय ने समाज को एक इग्नाइट करने का भी काम किया था। ऐसे युद्ध में जो फर्स्ट जनरेशन के जिन्होंने अपना व्यापार खुद खोला और सक्सेसफुल जिनकी स्टोरी थी, ऐसे 30 लोगों को विश्वविद्यालय ने अलग से सम्मानित किया हुआ है। ये उसका वो है। CISF के अक्सर अखबारों में आता है कि उनको स्ट्रेस होता है, जो फ्रिस्किंग करते हैं ताजमहल पे जो पोस्टेड है, उनके लिए एक साथी सहयोगी नाम से कार्यक्रम हम लोगों ने G20 में शुरू किया कि माना अपने साथी को चुनना और उसका सहयोग करना। क्योंकि टूरिज्म आगरा में तब तक नहीं डेवलप हो सकता जब सारे लोग मिलकर के प्रयास न करें। CISF भले सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस है, लेकिन उनका बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल होता है। इसलिए हम लोगों ने CISF को 2 अलग अलग बैचों में बुला करके उनको स्ट्रेस मैनेजमेंट पे एंड हाउ टू बिहेव विद द टूरिस्ट, इस पे 2 अलग अलग ट्रेनिंग सेशन आयोजित किए। ये आप देख सकते हैं, उनमें बहुत उत्साह था। उनके लिए तो बिल्कुल एक पिकनिक जैसा था। दे ऑल वर वेरी हैप्पी। एक इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस एनवायरमेंट इश्यूज, सस्टेनेबिलिटी, पॉलिटिक्स एंड इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट पे भी 16, 17, 18 को G20 कार्यक्रम के तहत किया गया। हमारा MOU है हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी USA के साथ। अभी माननीय कुलपति जी कल भी वहाँ पे एक वर्कशॉप थी, इंटरनेशनल वर्कशॉप, तो हम लोगों ने कल भी ऑनलाइन एक वर्कशॉप ऑर्गेनाइज किया था। दैट वाज अटेंडेड बाय मोर देन 650 पीपल फ्रॉम अक्रॉस द ग्लोब। काफी दूर दूर से, इवन अपने यहाँ अंडमान निकोबार से लेकर के श्रीनगर से लेकर के पूरे पार्ट्स माने कंट्री के वो थे, और विदेशों के भी काफी पार्टिसिपेट्स थे। ये इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस का वो है। नाउ वी आर गोइंग ग्लोबल। जैसे मैंने कहा कल, माननीय कुलपति जी इस बात की विटनेस है कि हार्वर्ड के लोग अब हमारे साथ प्रोएक्टिव होकर के, पहले हम उनसे कोलैबोरेशन करने के लिए करते थे, नाउ दे रिक्वेस्ट कि हम कुछ इस फील्ड में आगे बढ़े, हम कुछ इस फील्ड में आगे बढ़े। हम लोग ग्लोबली जा रहे हैं। और एक यूनिवर्सिटी ने एक विशेष बात यह है कि पहली बार हम लोग बियॉन्ड बाउंड्री जा करके 4 अंतर्राष्ट्रीय लोगों को हमने कल सम्मानित किया। माननीय कुलपति जी ने उसी इंटरनेशनल वर्कशॉप से सम्मानित किया था। दे वर द रेनाउंड एकेडमिशियंस वर्किंग इन डिफरेंट फील्ड। ये साहू जी है, इकोनॉमिक्स से है, वो हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी में सेंटर फॉर ग्लोबल बिजनेस स्टडी के प्रोफेसर नरेंद्र रुस्तगी ये सब डायरेक्टर हैं सेंटर फॉर ग्लोबल बिजनेस स्टडी के, अब बिजनेस के मैनेजमेंट के एक्सपर्ट हैं। ये हार्वर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी के वाइस चांसलर है, प्रोवोस्ट है और चीफ एजुकेशन ऑफिसर है। कोपिन स्टेट यूनिवर्सिटी के प्रोफेसर अनुरो है। इन 4 हस्तियों को कल माननीय कुलपति जी ने ऑनलाइन सम्मानित किया है। इसका फायदा यह है कि हमारी जो विरासत है और गुरु वशिष्ठ सम्मान दिया गया है, एटलीस्ट क्या होगा उन देशों में वो लोग गुरु वशिष्ठ के बारे में सोचना शुरू करेंगे। भगवान श्री राम के जो गुरु थे उनके बारे में भी सोचना शुरू करेंगे। तो ये सम्मान ही नहीं है बल्कि ये हमारे कल्चर का आप ये कह सकते हैं कि वो है एक विस्तार है, कल्चरल आप एक्सपेंशन कह सकते हैं। हमारे आइडियोलॉजी का मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम राम के जो गुरु हों उनके नाम पे अवार्ड देना, सम्मान देना, ये हमारी आइडियोलॉजी का एक्सपेंशन है। ये आज की मीडिया कवरेज है इस वर्कशॉप से संबंधित। ये रंगोली हमारे लिए बच्चों ने बनाई हुई है।
Thank you, Professor Rakosi, for the report on G20 activities over here. जैसा कि मैंने कहा था कि अतिथि देवो भव की परंपरा है और अब चूंकि कार्यक्रम समाप्ति की ओर अग्रसर है तो इसलिए अतिथि आए और स्मृति लेकर के न जाए ऐसा नहीं हो सकता। इसी दिशा में मैं कुछ स्मृति चिन्ह विश्वविद्यालय की तरफ से देने के लिए कुछ महानुभावों का अनुरोध करता हूँ। मैं अनुरोध करता हूँ विश्वविद्यालय के प्रतिकुलपति प्रोफेसर जितेंद्र साहब और G20 के कोऑर्डिनेटर प्रोफेसर लकुश जी से कि वह हमारे आज के मुख्य अतिथि मिस्टर JS मुकुल साहब को शॉल पहनाएं और स्मृति चिन्ह देकर के उनका स्वागत करें। मैं इसके साथ ही अनुरोध करूंगा प्रोफेसर देवेंद्र कुमार जी से और प्रोफेसर रणवीर सिंह जी से कि विश्वविद्यालय की कुलपति माननीय आसुरानी जी को स्मृति चिन्ह भेंट करें। अच्छा अली साहब, अच्छा ठीक है। मैं आपसे अनुरोध करूंगा कि RIS की फैकल्टी मिस्टर सैयद अली साहब को स्मृति चिन्ह भेंट करें। मैं प्रोफेसर गौतम जायसवाल जी और डॉक्टर अंकुर गुप्ता जी से अनुरोध करूंगा, अंकुर गुप्ता जी इसमें शायद नहीं है, और साथ में डॉक्टर रीता देवानी जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वे आएं और विश्वविद्यालय की कुलपति प्रोफेसर आसुरानी जी के स्मृति से भेंट करें। प्रोफेसर गौतम जायसवाल जी और डॉक्टर रीता देवानी जी। मैं प्रोफेसर BP सिंह साहब से अनुरोध करूंगा कि विश्वविद्यालय के वरिष्ठ शिक्षक प्रोफेसर सुब्रमण्यम जी को स्मृति चिन्ह भेंट करें। मैं डॉक्टर मोहम्मद हुसैन साहब से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वे आए और प्रोफेसर गौरंग जी को स्मृति चिन्ह भेंट करें। G20 के कोऑर्डिनेटर प्रोविंसी साहब को स्मृति चिन्ह में डॉक्टर राजीव वर्मा। विश्वविद्यालय की नारी शक्ति की तरफ से डॉक्टर सालनी शर्मा आईटी फैकल्टी जो सीनियर फैकल्टी हमारे यहाँ, उनसे अनुरोध करूंगा कि वह डॉक्टर लकुश मिश्रा जी जो G20 के कोऑर्डिनेटर को स्मृति चिन्ह भेंट करें। मैं डॉक्टर श्यामजी गुप्ता से अनुरोध करूंगा, मैं डॉक्टर श्यामजी गुप्ता के G20 के कोऑर्डिनेटर डॉक्टर शरद चंद्र उपाध्याय जी को स्मृति चिन्ह भेंट करें। उपाध्याय जी ऊपर आ जाइए। मैं ललित कला संस्थान के वो छात्र जिन्होंने पिछले दिनों में काफी कार्य किया, जिनको कि हम लोगों ने स्टूडेंट्स चैंपियन का नाम दिया है, उस कड़ी में BFA 4th ईयर के मिस्टर नासिर खान BFA 4th ईयर, ब्रजेश चंदे BFA 3rd ईयर, मिस्टर रविंद्र सिंह MFA 2nd ईयर, रोहित कुशवाहा MFA 2nd ईयर। कोई नहीं। अब स्टूडेंट प्रेजेंटर मिस्टर राहुल और मिस पूजा यादव दोनों से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वे मंच पर आए।
बीच में मैं डॉक्टर प्रोफेसर भूपेंद्र शर्मा जी से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि हमारे आज के कोऑर्डिनेटर और संचालक प्रोफेसर संजीव कुमार जी को सम्मानित करने का कष्ट करें।
अंत में एक छोटा सा और कठिन कार्य के लिए मैं मंच पर आमंत्रित कर रहा हूं प्रोफेसर अजय तरिया साहब को धन्यवाद ज्ञापन के लिए।
Thank you, Professor Sanjeev Kumar. The 1st of December 2022 was an important date for India and proud moment for all Indians. India assumed presidency of the G20 with sense of responsibility and humility. Our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has referred today's youth as nation builders and leaders of tomorrow. They are growth engines of the world. It is because of this reason that the Youth Connect program has been planned in this university with the important inputs and information on India G20 presidency and what are responsibilities they can take up as a youth. Let me begin by thanking RIS, Research and Information System for Developing Countries, and Ministry of External Affairs for choosing Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University Agra to be part of G20 University Connect program offered to only 75 selected universities of India. It is a matter of great privilege and honor that a motivating lead lecture was given to our young minds by Ambassador G.S. Mukul, IFS, and she is also Shu Sherpa of G20 summits for our country, who has led the country in many fronts on international platforms. Thank you, sir, for your valuable time and sharing your thoughts and wisdom. I am thankful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashurani, for her inspiring words. She has always encouraged G20 activities in the university to bring G20 into our lives, as she firmly believes that our students are brand ambassadors in disseminating information of our activities to more and more people. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor. Mr. Syed Ali, consultant to RIS, Dr. Anshuman Gupta, Dr. Priyadarshini Dash, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, Director General RIS, also deserves special thanks for coordinating this event with the university and also supporting it financially and making it successful. My special thanks to Professor Sugam Anand, Professor Gaurang Mishra from Agra College for their special remarks on G20 India's presidency. Presentations by Mr. Rahul and Pooja Yadav reflects our youth thinking, and they deserve a big thanks for their thoughts. I thank Professor Lakush Mishra and his team members for coordinating the university events with district administrators. Our special thanks to our student champions, student volunteers and faculty members in conducting, participating, performing and excelling in G20 activities conducted since 1st of December 2022. I am thankful to my fellow colleagues, Professor Sanjeev Kumar, Professor Sharad Upadhyay, Registrar Dr. Vinod Kumar Singh, FO Mr. Satyen Kumar, Professor Devendra Kumar, Professor Sanjay Chaudhary, Professor Gautam Jaiswal, and research scholars of Chemistry Department for their help to conduct this event. I thank Professor Anil Gupta, Pooja Saxena, Deepak Kulshresh, Tarun Srivastava, Professor B.P. Singh, their second in charge, and their team for their support in making this event visible at local, national and international level. I thank Dr. Devashish Ganguly and his students also for their melodious recitations. Last but not the least, thanks to all the faculty members, especially thanks to Professor Sundar Lalji, ex-Vice Chancellor Jaunpur, our guests from district administration, dear students, media and press for their presence. Thank you one and all present here. I hope yours and ours Bhagidari in country mega initiative will increase in coming time to time. Jai Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Jai Hind.
प्रोफेसर संजय साहब, एक छोटा सा अनाउंसमेंट, उसके बाद हम सभी लोग राष्ट्र गान के लिए अपने स्थान पर खड़े होंगे। जितने भी छात्र छात्राएं यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं उनके लिए रिफ्रेशमेंट की व्यवस्था यहीं पर है, उनको रिफ्रेशमेंट यहीं पर उपलब्ध करा दिया जाएगा। और हमारे विश्वविद्यालय के सभी संकाय सदस्य जितने भी शिक्षक यहाँ पर बैठे हुए हैं उन सभी का जो रिफ्रेशमेंट है वो गेस्ट हाउस में है, 2 पार्ट में बैठक कर दिया है। और इस कार्यक्रम के समापन के समय अब मैं आप सभी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि राष्ट्रगान के लिए अपने कार्य की